Well, hello, everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to Rattlecast number 100. Thanks so much for joining me. A longtime contributor and a poet that I really admire, Alison Luterman, will be joining us at the bottom of the hour. But before we begin, I should say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do this because we love poetry. And I know you love poetry too, so please do make sure you click the like button and share. I've talked a little bit about how valuable it is to share stuff on social media because everything is algorithm based, and you can fall into this spiral where nobody sees your posts, so nobody comments and likes, and so nobody shares, and so the algorithm doesn't think it's worthwhile. And lately, I'm happy to say that on Facebook, we're back into the old ways. We have hundreds of likes and things like that per post, which is really wonderful. So thanks, everybody, for doing that. And you can help out by doing that right now, too. So make sure you share and make sure you're subscribed. Click the bell for notifications, all that kind of good stuff, just to tell to the computers that you care about what we're doing here. And I hope you do, because I love doing it and always happy to share. So before we start with Alison Luterman, of course, we're going to open up with Poets Respond Live. And I'm going to go to today's poet, which is Rita Mae Reese. And let me call up Rita first and see if we can get her on the line. Hey, Rita, you are live on the air. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Tim. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's so great to talk to you. So where are you calling from? Where are you located? I can't remember.
I'm in Madison, Wisconsin.
Ah, that's right. And so your poem, How Many, was about one of many poems we received about the just tragic collapse of the tower in Miami. Do you want to talk a little bit about what inspired you to write this poem and anything you want to say about it?
It did come from, I was having lunch with my mother-in-law and my mother and watching them my mother-in-law had just moved into a condo. I just helped her move in a couple of days before. And so just seeing those two and myself, of course, struggle with this horrific news after a year of just incredible losses and pain, and having that juxtaposed with finally being out in public in a restaurant for the first time with those two. So things starting to get better, and then this reminder of that devastating loss, and what for many families might end up being ambiguous loss, where the bodies just are never found. And I think my mother remarked on how they said at first, there was only one body, and just how human it is to want to believe that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the same thing happened to me, actually. I saw it on Twitter, and I saw the news, and I don't really look at the news much, but on Twitter, on the trending, I happened to see it, and it said building collapses, and there was video of the wreckage and things, but then it said only one, or I think at the time it said 5 dead or something. And it was just so, I believed, I thought, wow, it must have been empty. Somehow that made sense. And I was thinking, why would the condo have been empty?
Right.
And then to slowly realize that it just wasn't. That's just who they've identified so far, and everybody else is presumed dead. It's just such a sad thing.
Yeah. And it has that weird quality of being this slowly unfolding thing that happened instantly. It just happened so quickly.
Yeah.
But of course, the build up to it was also this long, terrible story with so many bad things compounding in it to make it happen so as quickly and devastatingly as it did.
Yeah, yeah. Do you want to explain to you about this Virginia Woolf quote, which I just loved, I'd never heard before? You said you saved it and found it from a long time ago. Do you want to explain that?
Yeah, so I'm a fan of Virginia Woolf, and I think at this point I was reading either her diaries or reviews and came across this quote, and I think it was shortly after I had read Orlando, but I don't think it was about Orlando. I think it was a review of another biography, and it's just as some of Virginia Woolf's lines do, just sticks in your head in its entirety, even though it can be fairly long. And it struck me as very true and something that I hadn't heard expressed quite that way before. And so I've carried it with me for probably over 20 years. And I think I tried to put it in a poem even once before, and it's such a complicated quote. The first time I tried it, it did not work at all. But just the image of the plates on the waiter's hand, and the idea of like the multiplicity of loss that we'll never understand, even if we have the exact accurate body count. We don't really know how many cells and how many lives that impacted. Like there's that unknown quantity, and I felt like that quote connected with that in a really, for me, a very powerful way.
Yeah, definitely. And too, the plates piled is a metaphor for the floors piled.
Right.
Yeah. Well, do you want to go ahead and read the poem?
Sure.
Okay.
How many? A biography is considered complete if it merely accounts for 6 or 7 cells, whereas a person may have as many thousand, one on top of the other, as plates are piled on a waiter's hand. Virginia Woolf. The women with me might as well be ghosts, and maybe me too, though we can order food in the diner next to the table of 20-somethings and their cacophonous lives, so loud we have to nearly shout for each other and the waitress, another sort of ghost, I suppose, to hear. At our table, we are trying to talk about the collapse of a condo 1,000 miles away, and how the news at first reported only one death, as if the building had been largely uninhabited, or as if its inhabitants could walk through walls, let ceilings and the entire lives of neighbors plummet straight through them. The building that collapsed, maybe, probably, from neglect, held over 150. The exact number changes with each report. The news travels at a speed far more terrible than mercy. Every day we fall further and further behind. It is almost time to go, and we may not talk about this again. How many cells are we here at this table? And who would like the check?
Yeah, just excellent poem. Rita Mae Reese with How Many. Thanks so much for joining us and for writing and sharing that poem today.
Yeah, thank you so much for the work you do. Rattle's a terrific magazine, and really admire you.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. And say hi to Allison Townsend for us. I guess you're in the same writers group. Allison mentioned that in an email to me today.
Oh, yes. She is wonderful. I'm very lucky to get to share work with her and get to read her work on a regular basis.
Yeah, that must be some group you've got there if it has both of you.
Yeah. There's some really talented women. They've been together. I'm a recent member, joined about 2 years ago, I think. So.
Well, great. Well, thanks again for being here, Rita, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yep, you too. Bye. Once again, that was Rita Mae Reese with How Many from Poets Respond today. And then we have another poem from Saturday, and the poet could not make it tonight, but let's find this poem. This was a 4th of July poem. And, the big talk about the 4th of July nowadays is, of course, all the fireworks. And not only the fire risk, is there's just hundreds of, really thousands of fires probably across the country, hundreds just in certain cities. And then with the risk of fire, of course, and the trauma that it feels sometimes, but also the joy. There's such a strange mix of people who love the fireworks and don't, and social media is full of sort of a debate usually nowadays on whether or not fireworks are okay or if they're great or if they should be banned. They're banned where I am because of the heavy forest fire risk where we are. It's extreme conditions, and you can't. Actually, I was looking at a house one time before we moved up here, and just finding one fireworks shell in the backyard. The real estate agent called the police. And this was John Glowney's poem, Liberty, about the 4th of July. And he says this, Liberty, I'll put this on screen. Liberty is a poem that begins as a response to the 4th of July a few years ago, was set aside and was picked up again today and finished off. Seattle just experienced a heat dome with 3 days of record temperatures, which is what reminded me of this unfinished poem, and the approaching holiday brought it back. And so I'm so glad that this poem did come and become finished. And I'll read it for you. This is John Glowney's poem, Liberty. Fire in the hole, says my neighbor. Dry roofs, dry lawns, the reservoir's low. It's been an extra dry summer. Too dry to set off fireworks, mutters everyone except him. But here we are, milling about in the closed-off street, eating 3-bean salad and hot dogs blackened on a grill dragged off the back deck while he gleefully rains hot sparks everywhere. Tim next door has his garden hose out, dampening down his straw-colored grass. He'll set us all on fire, we whisper, no regard for the property of others. Someone tosses out some smoke bombs. The street fills with waves of green, yellow, blue. Kids run through the smoke as strings of firecrackers fizz. They wave sparklers against the approaching dark, against the world of adults, for liberty, for its pursuit. He shouldn't be setting those off, we all murmur, like children secretly in love with a fresh fear of each new explosion. Another loud burst of silver sprays over our heads. Fire in the hole, he shouts. And that was the 4th of July poem this year by John Glowney, Liberty. And that poem was actually poem number 500 in the history of Poets Respond. And that made me curious. I looked up the stats. So we've published, for Poets Respond, we've published 500 poems by 327 different poets over 7 years and a little bit. That's been 370 weeks now. And the total number of poems submitted, since it's all unsubmittable, I can actually count this pretty easily. It's 61,952 poems have been submitted to Poets Respond over that 7-year period. That is an average of 168 per week. And the daily record was 313 in one day on March 20th, 2020. I didn't add it up, but that week I think we had 1,200 total for the week. That was, of course, when lockdowns were beginning for the pandemic and everyone was at home kind of freaked out. And so people wrote a poem about it, which is what poetry does. And maybe we'll talk about that in a little bit with Alison Luterman. So most of the poems, obviously, or most of the poems are by poets who were in there one time. But the record for most poems on Poets Respond was 10 poems, which is Alejandro Escudé, Sonia Greenfield, Abby Murray, Devin Baldwin, and Dante DiFestano have each had 8. Michael Mark, Lynn Knight, Amy Miller have had 7. Jacqueline Holton has had 6. Jose A. Alcantara and Rain Lennon have had 5. And so those are the record board for Poets Respond for the first 500 poems. And it made me want to look back at my favorite. I was trying to think if I could pick one, and which one is probably my favorite. And I think it would be this. This was a September 14th, 2014 response poem by Sonia Greenfield. I'll read her note first, I guess. The poem is in response to the ongoing statements between Stephen Sotloff's family and the White House. And Stephen Sotloff, if you don't remember, he was somebody who was being held hostage. I can't remember all the details of the story, actually. He was held hostage somehow by the Islamic State, by ISIS, but I can't remember the details of his being kidnapped and captured. But anyway, so it's a response to that, but also a response to the pat use of the phrase, which I heard uttered on CNN on the 13th anniversary of 9/11 that week. Mostly it's about the inadequacy of platitudes to soothe those who are grieving as a result of tragedy, and this week's news seemed rife with it. And so this is, I think, my favorite poem that we've published in Poets Respond. This is Sonia Greenfield's poem. It's just a great use of metaphor and image here. A spokesperson said, thoughts and prayers go out. So let's play that.
A spokesperson said, thoughts and prayers go out. Out like what? Whispers in a tin can tied with yarn, 1,000 miles long, to the can of a woman, her ear desperately pressed to its emptiness? Like a loon song transmitted by Morse? Can you fathom the miles of murky ocean that whale must sing through? Did you know some people believe all sounds ever made are still present, hovering like butterflies? Even say the whir of a copy machine out there in the ether, sent flying when the first plane hit. Do you see voices as monarch wings wheeling through the sky? If you shout from the window of a 1,000-foot tower before you fall, where does that scrap of voice go? Is it still falling? You mean go out like candles snuffed by the wind? You mean out like empathy in tiny increments marching like ants made of sound across the wires of the world? Did she just hear an Our Father whiz past? I'm sorry, she said. I think you're breaking up.
Just a wonderful poem again. Once again, that was Sonia Greenfield's poem, A Spokesperson Said, Thoughts and Prayers Go Out. And that's one of those things. You hear that phrase, thoughts and prayers go out, and every time those lines and that image of the ants, what does she say? In tiny increments marching like ants made of sound across the wires of the world. Every time some politician making platitudes says that phrase now, I see those ants sort of marching out of his mouth across the wires as if he really cares. And that is Sonia Greenfield's poem, A Spokesperson Said, Thoughts and Prayers Go Out. I wanted to see who has a Poet Respond poem. If you have a Poet Respond poem that's ready to go, text me right now. Let's see. Trying to see who had one. Because I'd like to keep the first half an hour Poet Respond. So I see prompts. Nivedita. Prompt. So we got a lot of prompt poems here, but no one with news poems. Okay. Well, I think then, in that case, if you have a news poem, I'm going to put up the numbers on screen again here. They are right here. So email it to openmic@rattle.com. That's openmic@rattle.com. Or send me a chat message over Skype to Rattle Poetry. Or call in the phone, 818-850-7727. Just let it ring a few times, then hang up, and I'll call you right back. Looking for Poets Respond poems right now, but I'm going to play just a random one then, if we don't have any lined up from guests. We have tons of prompt poems for later in the show, though. So I'm going to just go to a random one. We'll go down to, what year? Let's go down to, let's try Happy. I wonder if Happy was actually a happy poem. This is Nancy Lee from March 19th, 2007. And here we go. Let's do this and we'll see if anybody has a poem about current events to share in the next 10 minutes. This is Nancy Lee. This poem is about a young Tuva girl, Saglana Salchak, from the taiga forest in Siberia near the Mongolian border, who traveled hours to get help for her sick grandmother. She traveled several miles across frozen tundra and riverbanks high with snowdrifts filled with wolves. I thought about girls and fairy tales, happiness and helplessness, and how wonderfully life frustrates these boxes. And so that is Nancy Lee talking about this article. I wonder if there's a photo of the Tuva girl. Yeah, here she is. Salgana Selchak, crossing the area filled with wolves, wins prize from locals, but lands mother in legal trouble. And that's the girl who braved the wolves for this poem. And here's this poem, Happy, by Nancy Lee, her response to this news article way back in March 19th, 2017. And then I do see somebody just called. Gail Walensky just called. So we'll call Gail back after we hear this poem. This is Happy.
Happy. You told me that I'm not happy, or not someone you think of as happy, and I sense that it came from love or something wanting to be near it. I struck back when what I wish I'd said was that young Saglana from the taiga forest walked 5 miles at -34 to get help for her grandma. She was 4 and alone along frozen banks, no fear of wolves, nothing but a tight fist of matches, trekking tundra and carrying fire. That I see, and words turn me back into song, a throat song. Some lit thing nearer is all, if you'd asked.
Once again, that was Nancy Lee with Happy. And, okay, so we have this 608 number. Well, I don't know. So the reason why I'm struggling a little bit here is because Skype updated the way their layout looks. And so let's see. Okay. So I saw Gail Walensky. Let's see. I saw that phone call coming in. Okay. Well, let's do one more random poem. I mean, I love random poems too. I just, and David Cook, where did they go though? Recent chats. I saw David Cook calling in too, but they're like hidden now. Let's see. Meet now. Hidden? No. Okay. I don't know. Something had to be refreshed. Okay. There we go. I fixed it. So let's call up Karen Warinsky right now and see what Karen had. I'm sorry about that, everybody. But when things change and you're used to doing them a certain way, it's tough to adjust. Okay. I don't know. Something. Hey, Karen, I hear myself in the background, so mute yourself, and then we'll bring you in.
And
okay, that sounds good. And if you want to click the video button, that's great too. But if not, that's fine.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay.
Hello, yes, so great to see you. So, what did you want to share? This was known knowns. One of my favorite quotes from an interesting person, to say the least, Donald Rumsfeld.
Yeah. So he died last week, and I kind of tried to tie it into 4th of July and the fact that we're pulling out of Afghanistan. It all kind of came together as a perfect storm, I felt. And then I saw that Rachel Maddow had shared, the day he died, I think it was the 30th, last Wednesday, that he actually lives in a house of a man who was known to be a slave breaker, and that he purposely bought this house. It was his weekend house. And I just thought all these things kind of make sense to me because, I don't know. Obviously, I'm no fan. So a
slave breaker is somebody that was especially abusive to slaves, that were,
right.
Oh, wow. And he bought that on purpose?
If you were a slave who was incorrigible or wouldn't do what the master wanted or had a mind of your own, and the master would get frustrated enough, they would send you to a person like this. And so Donald Rumsfeld owned this man's house and lived in it on the weekend. And I just think he was one of the orchestrators of a lot of misery. Now we're leaving Afghanistan in not great shape. Who knows what'll happen over there? Should we have even been over there? I mean, there's just so many questions wrapped around that whole 20-year period that we're just finishing up. And so I sat down and I wrote this piece.
Okay, well, let's hear it. This is on Known Knowns. Go ahead whenever you're ready. I'll put it up.
Okay. Known Knowns. Freedom brings the fight. So many ways to be a slave. We all must rise and continue to rise up out of our chains. Fear and insecurity not self-imposed bonds, while some are drawn by others, slowly, quietly, shrouding the draping of our doom. All require breaking. Rumsfeld owned Mount Misery, home of Edward Covey, slave breaker, tormentor of Frederick Douglass, till Douglass escaped into his destiny. A vacation home where he could flee his own torture, consequence of his daily decisions, displacing millions of Iraqis and Afghanis, sending thousands to die on their own personal mounts of misery, as he sat in his weekend home creating justifications, sipping cool drinks in Covey's front room, while others gulped on the waterboard. Now we pull out of Afghanistan and face the unknown unknowns without him.
Oh, wow. Great poem. That was known knowns. Thanks so much for sharing that, Karen Warinsky.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And it's interesting that you talked about cold drinks, because the weirdest thing about Rumsfeld was he had a big role, I guess, in getting the approval through for aspartame, the drink sweetener, which might go down in history. I mean, that might be It might go down in history like cigarettes or something. I mean, he's got his hands on everything.
Yeah.
That was back in the 70s. Interesting story.
Not necessarily a great career, So
yeah, for sure.
A lot of questions, and I just found it very interesting. So this Edward Covey was the man who tried to break Frederick Douglass.
Oh wow!
And Frederick Douglass is a great patriot and strong man, and got out of his situation. And I just found all these things coming together very interesting. If people want to read the transcript of Rachel Maddow's piece that she relayed about this, it's online. You can find it on June 30th last week. So
great. Well, thanks so much for sharing that, Karen. A really, really interesting poem. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. That was Karen Warinsky with No Knowns about Donald Rumsfeld. So we have 3 minutes or a little less than that until we're going over to Alison Luterman. So let's do really quick, and we'll get to David Cook later. I see the things are popping up now. So whatever's happening is fixed. I don't know what was going on. But we have David Cook there. We have Grace Farron. We have Julian Matthews. A bunch of people are ready. Richard Westheimer's here too. But really quick, let's do the Saiku for this week since we only have a couple minutes. The whole point of the Saiku is to just let you know and remind everybody in the world that you don't have to do poems about big news stories. There's science news every day. And so this was interesting. This was the article I was looking at this week. And this was vaccines grown in eggs induced antibody response against an egg-associated glycan. And this was just interesting to talk about the way that there's just, speaking of Rumsfeld with known unknowns and unknown unknowns, these researchers were studying flu vaccine at the Wilson Lab at the University of Chicago. And they kept coming up with this strange finding that they kept finding these cross-reactive antibodies that were just reactive to everything they tested. And for years, they couldn't figure out why. And it turns out, this is with traditional vaccines, has nothing to do with COVID or anything like that. This was flu vaccines they were working on. But it turns out that they were growing the viruses, or growing the vaccine in eggs, which is the way we do it. It's a cheap way to grow virus, or grow vaccine. And in the egg, there are these sugars, and somehow, without even realizing it, the vaccines were producing antibodies for the sugars rather than just the viruses they were working on. So that is a weird story. We don't know what the implications of this story are. It might be that the vaccines, like the flu vaccine, are less effective than they could be. So it could be good news where we learn to make better flu vaccines because of this discovery. But it's just really interesting. There seems to be, it doesn't give you allergies. There's no risk of that. They even mentioned that at the bottom of this article. But my Saiku, based on this, was here. And I try to decide, I can't decide if I should go in strange directions with the Saiku or keep it close to the vest. So this is the Saiku. And here we go. Light's long journey from the sun into the sun. Eggs over easy. Light's long journey from the sun into the sun, eggs over easy. That is our Saiku for today. Really quick way to make sure the timing lines up and remind everybody that you can write a poem about anything. Now let's go to our guest for tonight, Alison Luterman. I'm going to put a brief splash screen up here and call her up, and that's next week's guest. This week's guest, Alison Luterman. I'll call her up, and we'll be right back in just a minute or two. And we're kind of back. Again, a bit of a technical difficulty, a little bit of a delay. We're waiting for Alison to restart her computer so we get video too. We were only getting audio and not video. But while we wait for her to restart, and then I'll call her back up, let me just read her bio here. Alison Luterman is a poet, essayist, and playwright. Her books include poetry collections In the Time of Great Fires from Catamaran Press that just came out, Desire Zoo, which is the other one we have here, The Largest Possible Life from Cleveland State University Press, See How We Almost Fly, and a collection of essays, Feral City from SheBooks. She also has written plays, including Saying Kaddish with My Sister, Hot Water, Glitter and Spew, Oasis, Touched, and the musicals The Chain. Alison Luterman was raised in Massachusetts, the oldest of 4 children. She began writing poetry at the age of 6 or 7 and has never stopped. Since 2000, she has taught memoir and poetry through the Writing Salon in Berkeley, California, as well as at Esalen and Omega Institutes, at the Great Mother Conference, and at poetry festivals and conferences around the country. She lives in a rambling old house in Oakland where she tries and fails to keep the cat from clawing the couch and writes poems, essays, plays, and song lyrics. So let's actually call Alison up now. It should be better by now. And we're here with Alison Luterman. Hey, Alison, we already read your bio, so I'm just going to say hello. How are you doing today?
Okay, I'm fine. Thank you very much. How are you?
I'm doing great. A little delay, but that is okay. It's good to see you. We finally got everything worked up again and working right. I don't know, do you want to start us out with a poem?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
Let me start with one from Desire Zoo. That's the next to the last book. I'm going to start with a fun one. This is called Man on Wire, Woman on Couch Screaming. And if anybody's seen that movie called Man on Wire, it's about Philippe Petit. He's the guy he's a wire walker, and he illegally, with some friends, strung cable between the Twin Towers when the Twin Towers were up, and walked on it without a net, I don't know, a mile up in the sky in New York years and years ago. I think it was in the 70s. And there's a little film made about a documentary. And I am so scared of heights that, and I get on a balance beam 3 feet up on the air, my ankles turn to jelly. So just watching the movie sent me into a tizzy. So this is called Man on Wire, Woman on Couch Screaming. Above flapping green awnings and cars idling at stoplights, above yellow lines and white lines painted on asphalt, and the man hawking coffee and donuts from his little metal cart. Above cruel, jagged cornices of buildings and cars idling at stoplights. Above clouds, above gulls and their squawking. Higher than that, 110 stories up. One slippered foot glides onto a strung cable, then the other, and he's dancing, holding nothing but a long pole balanced against air currents, against laws, against common sense, dancing in God's empty palm. Slender wisp of a man, black-clad, crazy clown, and you watching the video on your couch. Why are you screaming and writhing like a woman in orgasm or childbirth, like someone being dangled head down from a great height? You're safe as a hamster in your own safe house, watching this man walk on a wire between what used to be Twin Towers. There used to be a world to step off from. Elevators, fax machines, water coolers. Who'd ever dream the dreamer would outlast steel? There are moments you pray to be ready for, but seldom are. He steps off the edge into air. Great shining panes of light, sheer freedom, the magnetic dread and pull of it. Now he kneels. Now he salutes the towers, the city, all space and time. Now he lies down, face to the sky, perfectly relaxed, and you want to faint. You who do not trust even the ground to hold you, who think you'll fall off the earth for one misspoken word. But this It's like being inside a cathedral of pure terror, skewered by the sound of bells. And even after he climbs down and is received into the blue-coated arms of a New York City cop, even after the whole city exhales and goes back to its ordinary pleasures and ills, it goes on somewhere, forever in the mind, in the living cells, to step out of the possible into amazement, how the dream floats over the city where steel melted and buildings dissolved, how in the end only the ephemeral endures.
There's a great poem.
Thank you.
Man on wire, woman on couch, screaming.
Screaming.
From Desire Zoo, a beautiful book, the older book of the two we have here. And I just love, I remember this poem, and I love that that line toward the end, to step out of the possible into amazement, which is what I think of is what poetry does. Isn't that what poetry is doing, is stepping out of the possible into amazement?
Yeah, I think so.
So what is your conception of what you're doing as a poet? Like, why are you here making poems? Why is that important part of your life, and how did it become an important part?
Such a great question. It's been a part of my life since I was a tiny girl, since I was like 6 or 7. I mean, I was writing poems very early and I just didn't stop. So it just became, I think the music of the language seduced me at first, rhyming and music, and I had this great book, A Child's Golden Treasury of Poetry, edited by Louis Untermeyer when I was a kid. Somebody gave it to me, and probably my parents, I'm sure. And it's funny because in my mind, it was a huge book. And I've since found that old copy, and it's not actually that big, but I was really small. And to me, it was like the world. And there were a lot of poems in there that were really over my head when I read them. I didn't understand them, but something about the language and the music of it seduced me. And there's a kind of magic in it. Yeah. I've tried to quit. I've tried to quit poetry numerous times in my life, and I failed each time.
Why is it? I'm kind of curious about that. Like, what is it that makes you think of quitting, and then what is it that brought you back?
Well, you never make any money, and it's when I reckoned up all the time and energy and blood, sweat, and tears, and how hard it is to get something really to work, and then I thought, well, I could be spending this time, getting ahead in the world in some other way. And I always came back because I needed it. And I think especially in moments of emotional, intensity, we kind of need song, we need poetry, we kind of have to go to that place. So I'm a lifer. I've sort of resigned myself. I'm not going to be able to quit. I did make a few valiant efforts to make something of myself.
Yeah, we're glad you failed at that.
Thank you.
Do you want to read another poem?
I do. I'll read something from In the Time of Great Fires now, which is the new book. And let's see. I've got a couple of things marked here.
Oh, and let me know what page it's on too for quick flip.
Oh yeah, I will. So I'm going to read Canoe, which is on page 16. Canoe. When I was young, years ago, canoeing on the green, green river with my young first husband, I wriggled out of my shorts, eased over the lip of our little boat, and became eel woman, naked and glistening, borne along in the current. He paddled, I floated and whirled and let the ripples take me. Even an hour of that kind of freedom can last for years and years, can become a touchstone you return to long after the rented canoe has been returned and the road trip has ended, and then the marriage, and then the husband's brief life, and you yourself have become someone else entirely. Still, you return in your mind to the days you could set up a tent in the dark and build a small fire from birch bark and newspaper and sit beside it, savoring your muscles' sweet ache as one by one the uncountable stars came out. That's page 16, In the Time of Great Fires, Canoe.
Yeah, that is Canoe from In the Time of Great Fires, which you see on the screen here. Both of these two books, the covers are just so beautiful. I wanted to ask you about how this book came to be, because I was surprised. It won the 2020 Catamaran Prize. And then there are several poems about the pandemic. So what was the timeline like on this? I was just thinking, like, how is this book here now and not next year?
Yeah, it was such a short turnaround. I've never had such a short turnaround from winning a prize to when it was published. So I found out that I won, I think it was May 31st of 2020. And then the next day or so, George Floyd was murdered like that weekend or something. I mean, it was right around that time. And then the book itself came out in September. So that was just 4 months. So, the manuscript won the prize, but then I went through an editing process after it had won with Zach Rogow, who works for Catamaran, is a wonderful poet and a good editor. And, I said to him, can I include, these newish poems that I'd written in the last few months? But I mean, the time frame of learning that I had won the prize from the time that the contest ended was not very long either. So some of them may have even been in the manuscript before. It was just all happened really fast in 2020.
Yeah, that seems really quick. I almost did a double take and I was like, wait a minute, pandemic.
I know. And it's early pandemic poems as opposed to I have late pandemic poems, which will be in the next book whenever that happens.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about this, the theme of the book? In the Time of Great Fires, we can imagine, what that is, just thinking about the theme. Of course, we both live in California, so we have the wildfires that are going like crazy. Thankfully not right now, but soon, no doubt. But then there are the other fires that are going on. I mean, it is sort of a time of fire. Can you just talk a little bit about how you conceived of that? Like why were you drawn to that as a title for the book?
That was also an 11th hour decision choice. I mean, I was struggling. When I first conceived of the book, like 6 years ago, I wanted it to be about the divine feminine, and I wanted to really focus on women. And there are, as you probably noticed, a lot of poems about women and girls and female images of the divine, and just all kinds of poems about women and girls. But I also see a fire rising in all women, but also especially young women. I see the feminine really, I don't know, maybe that's an old-fashioned way to put it. I don't know if that word even works anymore for our times, but I see young women like Greta Thunberg and Emma Gonzalez and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and the women who created Black Lives Matter, Patrisse Cullors, and all these amazing women, Alicia Garcia, all of them just on fire, with a kind of energy to move the world and things toppling, the Me Too movement, all of it, the Black Lives Matter movement. So I just saw this huge fire of change coming or here.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you think about, fires is something we're terrified of, but in the forest, actually, the fire is, there's certain pine trees that can't germinate without the fire to come through and clear the underbrush and open the pods and things like that. And a fire is an important part of an environment too, in a way of burning off the excess dead load, So
yes,
it's a very interesting metaphor for the content in the book. You're a very prolific writer, it seems to me. I mean, you come up with great poems through Poets Respond very often in our submission box, and I can't remember how many times we publish in Poets Respond, but a bunch of times. And you do a monthly, I think, newsletter where you're always having. It just seems like you're cranking out the poems. What is your process like? Do you write every day?
I don't. Not always, but right now, like in this month of July 2021, I'm doing a poem a day thing with a friend. So she sends me a poem every day and I send her, we're writing new poems every day. And the rule is no standards. We don't have low standards. We have no standards. So it's like, it can be complete, like, crap, and that's fine. But I've actually managed, a couple of poems have gotten written that wouldn't have gotten written otherwise if I didn't need to send a poem to Dawn. So I'm doing that. And I did that, the title poem of In the Time of Great Fires, I was doing with another friend, poet friend, where we agreed to do that. And they're not even like my closest readers. These women are kind of poet acquaintance friends who write in a different style than me, and that seems to work really well for both ends of us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So do you want to read another poem from the book?
Yeah.
And I should say too, before you do that, and if anybody has any questions, leave them in the chat windows on either Facebook or YouTube, and I will pass them along. We have a couple already. I'll pass them along later, but why don't we hear another poem in the meantime?
Yeah, I'd love to. Let's see. I want to read Some Girls. This kind of speaks to your question of like the theme. Some girls can't help it. They are lit sparklers, hot-blooded, half-naked in the depths of winter, tagging moving trains with the bright insignia of their fury. I've seen their inked torsos, falcons, swans, meteor showers, and shadowed their secret rendezvous, walking and flying all night over paths traced like veins through the deep body of the forest, where they are trying on their new wings, rising to power with a ferocious mercy not seen before in the cities of men. Having survived slander, abuse, and every kind of exile, they're swooping down even now from treetops where they were roosting, wearing robes woven of spider webs and pigeon feathers. They have pulled the living child out of the flames and are prepared to take charge through the coming apocalypse. I've learned that some girls are boys, some are birds, some are oases ringed with stalking lions. See, I cannot even name them, although one of them is looking out through my eyes right now. One of them is writing all this down with light-struck fingers.
That was Some Girls from in the time of great fires.
Yes.
Let's do a question. This was from David Cook. He says, Alison, you've said that body is always a theme in my work. Do you have a particular fondness for certain parts, appendages, or organs?
No, I don't. I want to talk about the body from the inside out rather than thinking of it as an assemblage of parts. I want to talk about how it feels to be in a body, how it feels to be in a muscular, moving, sensing, feeling body. Blood is probably a big theme for me. Skin, breath, more so than any part. Fingers, maybe, hands, eyes. I don't know, all of it.
One of the things that I wanted to talk about, I read somewhere that you're in an improv troupe. And that you, in that improv troupe, you write poems spontaneously during the act of performing. Can you talk a little bit about how you started doing that? I mean, it's such a strange thing to be doing, and that must inform your poetry in some way.
Well, it's okay. So the troupe is called Wing It. We've been on a long, things are shifting in that organization, which is called Interplay, and the pandemic. We haven't met in person for a long time. We were meeting on Zoom a little bit. And I got sort of roped into, just, hey, do a poem. Alice, you're a poet, do a poem. And, there's usually a musician behind me kind of vamping. And sometimes people dancing. And I'll stand there and speak a poem. I'm not writing it. I'm saying it as it comes. And when I was first asked to do that, I was like, oh, my God, I can't do that. I have to sit at my desk and sweat over every word. That's how I work. But I just did it. I just opened my mouth and like whatever comes out, I'm going to go with. And it's the stuff that I improvise like that is a little different, feels different than what I write. But it showed me that you can do it. You can just open your mouth and speak. Anybody can try it if you're listening at home. Just stand in the middle of your living room or your bedroom and just start saying words, and you could tape record it, and you could record it. I'm sorry, that's dating me. You can record it on your phone in your voice memo app, and there you have a poem.
Do you remember the first time you did it? I mean, it seems like that would be terrifying, though, to be on stage and having to do that. I mean, even on myself in a room, if I was recording it, it seems like it would be sort of frightening. It's interesting to think about why that would be frightening, but did you experience it that way?
Yeah, well, I mean, Interplay is really great. People, if they're interested, can go to interplay.org or bodywisdom.org and check it out. And what they do is, it is scary for many people to improvise, because you could make a fool of yourself, but they break it down into these really little increments of, they're really good at breaking stuff down. So that it was at a workshop, and it was my first away workshop where, I was there for 2 or 3 days with this group of people, and we'd been playing together. We'd been, making funny sounds and dancing, and moving our bodies and doing, making fools of ourselves in front of each other a lot. And so I wasn't in front of an audience. I was just with people who were also doing this. And then the director asked me to say a poem. And I remember there were peacock feathers in a big vase. It just happened to be at this place. So I was so shy that I took the peacock feathers and I stuck them in the waistband of my yoga pants. So the feathers were kind of created a little screen in front of my face. And I spoke the poem. And there were peacocks on this property. So in this retreat center, it was Oasis. So I spoke the poem through the peacock feathers, and it was a poem about the peacocks. And that actually ended up going into one of my books, that poem.
Oh, wow.
So, a version of it, not exactly but I afterwards went and wrote down what I remembered and played with it.
That's interesting. Yeah. Like I assume usually these probably aren't recorded, right? So you would have no record of all the poems that you've done in this way. I assume.
No, I don't. I just speak them and they're gone. They're here and they're gone. And you're kind of, while I'm doing it, I'm paying attention to the sound of the music behind me, and I'm watching the dancers, and I'm trying to, they're informing me, what their movement is informing me. And sometimes I'm moving myself. So it's all kind of a dream. It's a big dream that we're all collaborating in. And when it's over, it's sort of like I just had this cool dream with these people, and I don't remember every bit of it. But it's a fun thing to do. If you let go of, having to do it right, or, a lot of the poems that I spoke might not work on the page.
Are you still there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, it's just your screen froze too. So I was wanting to make sure. I think we should just keep it with the audio and not worry about getting the screen, the video, which is frozen too.
Okay.
But that's fine, because the sound quality comes through great. But just to continue about that thought, the spontaneity of just spitting out poems, kind of, does that inform the way you write poems on the page when you're writing later? Do you feel like you're free, or does it free up your sort of creativity, or what's going on when you do that? I mean, that's the thing that I'm really curious about.
I think literally what's going on is that your brain is really lit up. I think my brain gets really lit up when I'm doing that. I feel very enlivened and lit up when I improvise, whether it's making a poem or whether just, doing a dance duet or a scene. I'm actually in a couple of different, I love doing improv. So I also belong to this Oakland improv group where we do scenes, which is more typically theatrical. And it just makes you fire on all cylinders. It uses all of me in a way that I really like. And I love having my body be involved. Like, I'm not sitting, in front of a laptop or with a notebook on my lap. I'm up, I'm moving, sometimes I'm singing. It feels much more enlivened than sitting and writing. So yeah, I think it does help. I want my work to feel spontaneous in that way. But the truth is I put things through a million drafts, and I can often be very anal and picky too. So
yeah.
All of that.
Well, let's hear another poem. What do you want to read next?
I'll read anything. Let's see. I want to read the Jasmine poem. my niece was just visiting, and I planted a bunch of jasmine on our front yard, and she's from Massachusetts, and she had never seen like a wall of jasmine like you have here, we have here.
Mm-hmm.
So this is called jasmine. Sorry, I live on a noisy street, so
That's okay.
we cluster, we clump, we give off the white hot honey of distant stars. Invisible fingers are always stroking our feathery body. We take hold of life like children born to a beautiful mother, who know this earth has always been ours. We hang on, we congregate, we thrust through fence railings with green reaching tendrils. Scientists speak of rising seas. Yes, the oceans are heating up. Yet, amid ongoing disaster, some woman years ago planted a mess of us from little starts in plastic pots. She didn't know what she was doing as she knelt and dug small holes, plopping in delicate dirt cupcakes, each one topped with a jaunty green hat and a sprig of blossom. She was absent-minded and forgot to water, so it took years, but we were tough, with the toughness of the ephemeral. And now we've grown into our own miniature galaxy, a wall of starry scent, a monument to those invisible explosions that occur wherever beauty drops her handkerchief.
That was Jasmine, another poem from In the Great Fires. Another beautiful poem. And you mentioned that you were very picky about lines and editing. What is the editing process like for you? Like a poem like Jasmine, did it start as much longer? Are there drafts that go in different directions before you found what you wanted to do with it? How does that work for you?
Yeah, I often write too much and cut. I overwrite. That often happens. I spend a lot of time on thesaurus.com. Do you know that website?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm on there all the time looking for words. I have I start with kind of placeholder metaphors that aren't that great, but I know that I'm going to come back and do something better, more original, sharper, more strange. So I don't think I like strangeness in a poem and strangeness in the language, but I don't naturally go there. Those aren't the well-worn ruts in my process. So and I think that's maybe one of the differences between the improvised work and the written work, is that with the written work, I'm more aware of, that metaphor isn't very fresh. I need to find something better. Whereas with the improv, you just go with the first thought, best thought, go,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're on to the next, and, it's gone. So
do you find that the first thought, though, it has sort of a more of a creative in its spontaneity? Do you think you come up with more interesting things that way? Is it less of a struggle to sort of spit out new metaphors while you're doing the improv?
Sometimes I'm sure that there are some good things I do in improv. And I know, improv, just like anything else, when you do it a lot, you can get into ruts. I mean, just like, we all have our little comfy places where we just dig ourselves a nice, comfortable little rut. And I've certainly done that sometimes with improv. But you don't have time to think. And so there's something beautiful about not being able to overthink things. I mean, you can't.
Mm-hmm.
There's no time. You have to keep talking, no matter what comes out of your mouth.
Well, your poems are full of characters and seem to be sourced from your own life. I would say. I think that's kind of clear from reading these books. Spartacus Anagnostris asks here, how do you make the characters of your poems feel real? How do you keep faith with the readers?
That's a great question. Well, they are real, and I think it's about picking the right details to make the character pop, to make them. So finding the salient detail that will give and it really doesn't matter in the end if the reader is seeing the same person that I'm envisioning. They could be seeing, they're seeing their own version of it. But as long as I've given them enough to go on, that they can see somebody and feel somebody.
Are you still there now? Uh-oh, we dropped. We'll get the video
Uh-oh.
back. Maybe since we dropped, we can get the video back now. I didn't want to have to call back because there were problems connecting in the first place, but we'll see if this works. Hope she can push the green button. Hey, thanks for
Can you
coming
hear me?
back. Yeah, we can. We hear you, and
Hi, you're
and your
frozen.
video's back too. I'm frozen for you.
You're frozen. I'm here.
Yeah, I'm here. We're good.
Okay. Can you see me?
I can.
want me
We have you back
Okay,
on
good.
video, which is good. So I was a little hesitant to hang up and call back. That usually fixes any frozen video. So now that we've done that, we have you back in the flesh.
This has been quite an adventure, a Skype adventure. Yeah. So I was talking about I Confess, which is a poem that I wrote where I follow an older woman around a supermarket and admiring her hair.
Mm-hmm.
And people really like that poem, but are they seeing the same older woman that I'm talking about? No, but it doesn't matter. They're seeing their own version of her.
Yeah, well, I always feel like what we're really responding to with poetry is honesty and intimacy, So if it's a real person for you, like that's what comes through on the page. Like it doesn't have to be like a specific person in the same way, if that makes sense. Like if it's authentic, then it's authentic. Like regardless of how you can. So it's like the process of making it authentic for you, I think.
Yeah. I'm not very good at faking things, so I just, I don't know how to do that. I just have to. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it does seem like your poems are drawn from your own life, and we get a real intimate perspective on your life through the good times and bad. And how much do you worry about that? Do you think about how much you're revealing to the public by publishing poems about personal topics?
Yeah, I do, but it's more like I worry about people in my life, for instance, my husband or other people who are close to me or, family members. I don't want other people to feel like I exposed them without their permission. So if I write a poem in which somebody else is exposed, I show it to them before I publish it. Mm-hmm. And if they say they don't feel comfortable with it, then I don't publish it.
Yeah. Well, that definitely makes sense. And you write too about grief very often, and from your mother's death is one thing, and the end of your marriage, another thing that I noticed in the book. Yeah. Do you find that poetry is a healing process for you?
I think it must be. I mean, I know a good friend of mine named Carla died, and a lot of Desire Zoo was me writing through her her dying and her death. And it was a way for me of catching and keeping these moments. We had some really beautiful, intimate moments as she was in her dying process, and I was with her. And I'm glad that I have those poems because I remember I captured what we said to each other, and how she looked at me and how I looked at her and what she looked like. And I put that in the poems kind of to keep her. So rather than taking pictures, because I'm not a photographer, I captured it in words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's hear another poem.
Okay. It makes me think maybe I should read a Carla poem, although I hadn't really intended to, but maybe I will. Maybe I'll read Say Yes to the Dress. This was a getting married poem. So I got married at the age of 50, remarried. And while I was engaged, I was flying across country, and I saw Say Yes to the Dress. You know how you watch junk TV while you're flying? I bring like 5 books on the plane, and then I end up watching TV the whole time. So this is called Say Yes to the Dress. And in this episode, a woman of 45 whose face says, "This cake is stale," whose face says, "Just tell me how much it costs," whose face, if you knew how to feel, would make you overtip your waitress. This woman, hauling her 2 teenage daughters, her mother, her sister, and an aunt, announces she wants to walk down the aisle in a ball gown, festooned in something poofy, like Cinderella. Even though the entourage and sales lady and everyone agrees a middle-aged bride should wear a sheath, something knife-like and discreet and lethal. Even though she and her fiance were both recently laid off and she's been living with this guy for years, arguing about bills and laundry, they have children together, they have a house which they might lose, and God knows why they're even getting married now. Neither one has health insurance still. It's her one big day and she's determined to have it. So dress after dress is trotted out, tea-length confections of satin and tulle, strapless numbers ribboned and ruched, and the words shirred and scalloped and pin-tucked are used and found wanting. The saleslady is practically drowning in a magnificent tumble of glossy, rejected fabrics, leaving the viewer to imagine the texture of this woman's disappointments. Her lower lip trembles. She only has $2,000 to spend, which in the parlance of this show is peanuts. Still, a girl has a right, doesn't she? Doesn't she? The flight attendant trundles by, offering coffee and cookies and headphones. And I'm thinking, say yes, 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 yes already to the sacred, dreaded threshold. Yes to being shredded like a negligee and scattered like seed pearls. And we're a mile up in the sky, where even in June there's a freeze of lacy snow over the rough brown breasts of the Rockies. The plane tilts and rights itself so quietly we don't even notice, dozing as we are, in a hive of white noise, suspended, blind over the deserts and mountains and fruited plains of our inheritance. Americans, with not quite enough leg room, frowning or chuckling in front of our separate screens, entitled to our dreams and dreaming them.
That was Say Yes to the Dress, a poem first published in Rattle, I think, Rattle number 30-something.
Yes, it was in Rattle. Yeah, finally. It's page 21 in Desire Zoo.
Yeah, from Desire Zoo. Just another just fun, interesting poem, which all your poems are. They move through language. There's just this sense of, I don't know, like openness. Like you never know where it's going to go, and the line lengths vary. It feels like very free-flowing kind of as you go through your poems. How do you approach line break? That's something that people ask about frequently, and yours vary a lot, but in a way that feels right. And I'm wondering, I just wondering like how you go about doing that. Like, what do you think of in terms of where to break a line in a poem?
Well, I play with it. I break them in different places and play with it. When I was younger, I think I cared more about like trying to get a surprise with the wraparound. And now I'm more interested in the breath and just wanting, the length of the lines to be natural with where we would take a breath. Sometimes I think I've been accused of the irregular line breaks. I'm afraid sometimes feel or look amateurish, but they're what feel right to me. I know that's not a very. I mean, it's hard for me to figure out why I do what I do.
Yeah, it's just interesting because it feels right too. And I was trying to think about why, because people who are listening love the the technical details of poetry, and I was just trying to think of like what makes it that they work being varied like that, and I really couldn't like get my hand on it. There's something about how like airy your poems are though, and how they sort of float through consciousness, like it's always coming back. You mentioned like writing out of the body earlier, and it's sort of always like seeing the landscape and then absorbing it and refracting it through in this way that's very like fluid or something, and so it fits really well with a line that's not like, if it was rigid, it would feel wrong. If they were all the same length, it wouldn't feel like free enough.
Yeah, that wouldn't be me. That isn't how my thought moves. It doesn't move in that kind of set pattern. But I know that there are people and whom I respect a lot who write much more formally than me. But I'm interested in sound. I'm interested in off rhyme and consonants and assonance and all that stuff. So I'm paying a lot of attention to the music of the actual words rubbing up against each other and chiming and all that. That's what's going on a lot.
Yeah, and do you think like the process of listening to the words in that way, is it from reading and having that sort of inner music going through you all the time? Is that what, because I find that there's nothing that makes me want to write poems more than reading good poems. And then it's sort of the whatever's flowing in there, and your brain is just, it's like waves of things through your brain, and then it sort of starts coming out. Is that how it is for you?
Yes, exactly. Reading good poems, and there are certain poets who kind of do that for me. Marie Howe is one of my people I go back to, and lately I've been reading a lot of Diane Seuss, who I think is gorgeous and brilliant. But yeah, certain poets, it feels like it flips a switch in my brain. If I spend a half an hour reading and kind of soaking my head in poetry, then naturally poetry is going to come out in the next half hour, if I can get that kind of time or take that kind of time to do it. Yeah, that's the best, most guaranteed way, is to read some good poetry. And then, sometimes you've read that book too many times and you need to find another one to kind of turn you on for the next one. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's hear another one.
Okay. I'll do something else from In the Time of Great Fires. Let's see. I'll read this one. It's called Appetite, for my young niece. The young girl in the photo is all knees and elbows, all blazing brilliance in her short velvet dress, next to the skinny boy with his arm crooked awkwardly around her waist. Both of them new at this, leaning together like sunflowers that have shot up overnight, threatening to topple, lighting the sky with their hot gold. It's almost painful to watch the pure appetite shining out of her and remember again the lively longing that buckled my knees and drove me around the bend for a few decades. Insatiable is what he called me, the lover who saw that thirst in me and didn't run away, but relished the reckoning as much as I did. So long ago, still, it's good to remember I was that greedy once. I wanted all of it, just as this girl will make her own way through the labyrinth. But oh, if I had some red thread to give her, or a handful of breadcrumbs.
That's an Appetite from
Appetite. Yeah. Oh, and I'm sorry, I keep forgetting to tell the page number. Appetite is on page 64.
No, it's all right. I find it in time. I think we're having trouble. We might be having trouble with. I think it might be the servers maybe in California are not doing good tonight. That might be the issue that's everywhere, because a lot of people are saying that they're getting choppy signals too, even though it's recording fine for me. Okay. So anyway, but we will. This is all being recorded locally, and we'll post the full video, and it's for a podcast too. So don't worry about that. I'm checking my connection is fine. I don't know what's going on. So the diagnostic stuff I've been doing while we're talking is not working either. It's one of those nights, I guess. Maybe the stars are in retrograde or something. Yeah. I have a gig per second, so it's not me. Yeah, I don't know. It's strange. But so most of the comments are about the freezing video, unfortunately.
Oh God! Well, you're coming across fine to me, and you're not freezing.
Yeah. It must be like some kind of server issues, like some backbone of the internet. That happened a few months ago. Anyway, it's rough doing a podcast like this, but it's okay. We can enjoy poems and talk poetry. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was just the way I feel like your poems too are sort of like there's a lot of prayer involved. It feels like what you're doing to me is some kind of like a secular prayer, like a religion of language or something, where you're acknowledging reality and then sort of describing it in that sort of ancient logos kind of way. Is that? Do you think of it like that way? Is it a kind of prayer? I know you're in our Buddhist poets issue.
Yeah.
And so what do you think of spirituality, and is poetry your practice of spirituality?
I love that. I think what you just said is it, but I didn't consciously formulate it that way. Yeah, I'm kind of a Jew-boo. I read Buddhist books. That's probably the religion I feel the most affinity for, and I'm a Jew, and I feel like we're a very reality-based religion in a lot of ways. So those two spiritual practices inform me, and poetry, probably the arts in general, poetry and music and theater and dance and improv are all kind of my ways of worship. Yeah, for sure. Secular. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what is it about that though? Like, why do it? what is gained from it? That's the thing that I always try to come back to, is like, why do poets do poetry? Because it's something that doesn't, like most of the our culture doesn't understand it at all.
Right,
and so you'll
I
get
know.
poems, you'll see poems that aren't poems at all, and they'll be treated as poems because people don't even know what poems are, or what art
Right.
is, in a way.
Right.
And so what is it? Like, what is it about doing that kind of prayer that seems worthwhile and fulfilling?
It's a great question. And I think when we do read good poetry, we feel something, and it makes me feel alive. And when, I just keep coming back to this word aliveness. When I'm making art, when I'm moving, when I'm singing, when I'm creating poetry, when I'm in connection, even having a good conversation with somebody where we're talking about things that matter, I feel more alive. I feel, it's cellular, and my brain is, happy. happy connections are happening in my brain. It's sparking. And when I'm, watching stupid TV, I don't feel alive.
Mm-hmm.
I feel numb, and I feel, deadened, and I don't like how that feels. So this feels better.
Yeah. And is that what draws you back to poetry when you leave it?
Probably so. Yeah. And also the fight. I like a good fight. It's just wrestling with it, not getting it right, coming back to it, trying to get it better, thinking, wanting to really make something beautiful, just having that desire to make something that really works.
Yeah. How do you approach the after the fact, after you have books, or have manuscripts of books and poems published?
Right.
How do you approach that, like, marketing angle and trying to find a press for the book? And because when you said struggle, I first thought you meant that, of getting your work actually out into the world.
Well, that too. Yeah, it is a struggle. It still is a struggle. I've got 4 books, and each one, it was a struggle to write the poems, and it was a struggle to get the thing published. All struggle. Yeah, a lot of struggle. I send to contests, and I get rejected, and I don't win, and I spend a lot of money on entry fees, and then every once in a while I win one.
Mm-hmm.
As 3 out of the 4 books, that's how I got them. Desire Zoo, Luis Rodriguez, wanted to publish it, so I was happy that Tia Chucha published it.
Yeah. That's a beautiful book too. I think that's my favorite cover I've seen in a long time. I don't know if I put it on screen yet, but that is just a beautiful, beautiful cover.
It's my friend Loren Ari, and she has a website. I think it's lorenari.com, LAURENARI, and she's a wonderful painter. And she's the one who picked this painting. I went over to her house, but I knew I wanted to use one of her paintings. And she was like, this one. And I thought, isn't that too busy? And she was like, no, this is going to work. And she was right. Yeah.
Interesting. So Aspen Crest, I'm not sure who that is, says, Desire Zoo is out of stock at Amazon. Is there anywhere we can buy it? Which is a good question.
Yes, go to Tia Chucha Press. And I'm so sorry. I know. And also, In the Time of Great Fires is temporarily out of stock, but they're going to do a reprint. We went through the first 500 copies that were printed. They're going to do another second printing.
Oh, that's great. So that's already like a bestseller for poetry then.
Oh yeah, bestseller. 500 copies. Right.
Yeah.
I'm laughing all the way to the bank.
Exactly. Do you do a lot of readings? I mean, now we have to do virtual stuff still. It's starting to pick up. But did you like doing readings before and performing the poems? Being in the improv troupe and having play experience? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a ham. I like to perform. I do. I'll if you invite me to read, I'll come out and I'll read. I like a big audience, and I like to say that I like to speak the poems. Some of them I know by heart. I always have an ambition to learn more of them by heart, and then hard to memorize, but yeah. I do.
One of the things that was interesting that I just learned about you looking up, your background is that you worked as a counselor, as an HIV counselor, and then as a drug and addiction counselor. Has that informed your poetry at all? Like there's this whole concept of poetry as healing, which I find really fascinating. And the idea that creating narrative and the healing power of that is just such an important thing, that the work of like James Pennebaker, that I can't remember the book he wrote, but that concept of just putting because the mind's always trying to make sense of your feelings, right? And your response and the world that you've encountered. And once you can make sense of it, you can kind of store it away. And that's what writing does in a way.
Yeah.
So what was your experience like? And I think that you were an HIV counselor at the height of the HIV crisis, right? Is that what I read?
It was. Yeah, it was right I worked at a place called the Epicenter, which was located at San Francisco General Hospital in the 90s, like 94, which was, we didn't have the drugs then. AZT was just coming on the scene, but they didn't have the sophisticated drug cocktails they have now. And HIV was pretty much of a death sentence, considered to be one for most people.
Mm-hmm.
It was such a good experience for me. And I think it was about listening. I mean, counseling is really about listening more than talking. So I think deep listening is a good quality to encourage in any artist, to be a good listener, a good observer, take things in deeply, and then I would digest them. And then, the quality of our lives is kind of determined by the stories that we tell ourselves about what's been happening to us and how we frame it, and whether we can see it in a bigger, with a bigger perspective, or whether we're really, locked into some smaller way of seeing things.
Yeah, Reese, is it who said it? Is it Nietzsche who said that people don't have ideas have people? And it's kind of like the story that you tell drives how you respond to everything that you encounter later too. So that's why storytelling is just so important.
Yeah, exactly. And learning just that thing, learning that you have the power to change how you tell your story. You can't really change the facts of what happened to you, but you can change the frame around the facts, and you can change the way you hold it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's see. We have maybe 10 minutes. Normally I would say, let's do a poem and then another question from the audience, but I don't know if the audience is still here. But they'll be here later, but let's do a poem and then talk a little bit more, and then one last poem. So 2 poems left.
All right, great. That's fine. Let's see. I'll do Witch Walk. There was this witch. Oh no, I'll do Braiding His Hair. So my husband grew his hair really long, and this poem is called Braiding His Hair.
And what page?
Oh, and it's on page 79 In the Time of Great Fires.
Okay, thanks.
Here we are each morning, my husband on our old kitchen chair, its upholstery mended with duct tape, his head bent forward while I comb out his long, wheat-colored hair. Not what I thought we'd be doing in our 60s, me dividing the wet silk of it, still stubbornly reddish gold, only a little white at the sideburns. 3 thick hanks in hand, I begin to plait, over, under, over, under. I don't remember when he stopped cutting his hair in the mirror and decided to let it grow long as a girl's. And he was mistaken for a girl once, a tall, stoop-shouldered man girl, when he stood on the sidewalk, back turned to the street, and a car drove by, honking and catcalling at him, not me. We laughed, but I had to wonder, when did his tresses first spill over his shoulders, halfway to his waist? It must have happened while we slept, as most things do. And how did he come to sit before me so patiently now, head bowed while I braid, as if he were the daughter I never had, and this my one chance to weave my bewildered care into each over, under, over, under.
That was Braiding His Hair.
Braiding His Hair.
From in the Time of Great Fires.
Yes.
This poem, or this book, was sort of 7 years in the making, if I did the math right, maybe. What are you working on now? And is there a way that because the thing that's really interesting about your books is they feel very continuous too. Because they're sort of, they're very personal, which means it's sort of like a long, it feels almost like a extended autobiography in a way. Like it's like, these are the things I've encountered, and then these are my sort of responses to them. And so they feel connected. Do you have like stuff you're working on now? And is it sort of a continuation of this, or do you have like projects that are different too?
Yeah, I do have projects. I have a bunch of projects going on right now. I'm writing a musical, and I did a song cycle with a I'm working with 2 different composers doing lyrics. And then I've been really diving into music personally. My husband's a musician. And, during the pandemic, when it was just him and me in our house, we started playing music together a lot. And I mean, he's much more advanced musically than me. So he plays piano really well and guitar really well. And I sing. And I got better singing because we practiced and practiced and practiced. And then I started taking voice lessons on Zoom, and really kind of doing a deep dive into music. So that's been the latest project. And then the poems are reflecting that. I've been writing about that. And yeah.
Yeah. What do you think is the difference between music and poetry? Like, is there's something to melody that, that's extra, it's way more data, of course, than a poem has.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but it feels like it's drawn from the same source at the same time. So how is that? What is that? How do you conceive of that relationship? That relation, they're similar, but one is much more. Let's see. So we should be back now. Everything looks like it's running. So I don't know if maybe that fixed it, or maybe it didn't. I think people are so far behind on the video that yeah, I think people are so far behind. Like, we were 20 minutes ahead of you, or something. We were poems ahead as I was watching the little preview window stream. So maybe I don't know. So we'll see. I was recording the whole thing locally though. So what I will do is get the video and just post the video as a new video, and then that should be good. Let's see. But we'll see if we can do an open mic. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's going to work. But if you would like to call in, I'll put the numbers up on the screen. What a frustrating day. I'll put the numbers up on the screen right now. So email your poem to openmic@rattle.com. That's openmic@rattle.com. And then once I have the poem, I can show it on the screen. And then you call in either over Skype, and hopefully it'll work. We'll see. Or over the regular phone. So over Skype, send me a chat message to Rattle Poetry, all one word. Over the phone, 818-850-7727. Let it ring a few times, then hang up, and we'll see how it goes. And I'll call you back when the time is right. So let's go. I don't think I'm going to bother doing a break because I've been fiddling with things so much. Let me just do I'll tell you what the prompt poem is for this week. The prompt for this week was right here. This was... write a poem in which the speaker is aboard a moving train. So that's your prompt for this week. Write a poem in which the speaker is aboard a moving train. And I wrote about... The only thing I could think of, it was a tough one, I thought. Because I don't think I've ever been on a train, actually, except for like the little trains around, like, with the kids, little kiddie trains at train museums and things like that. So I don't know. So I was thinking about it. And what came to mind was Einstein's train. And I don't know if I can explain it. I don't even understand general relativity, to be honest. But one of the things that Einstein did was this thought experiment where he imagined sitting on a platform and a train going by at like half the speed of light. And if you had a light on top of the train that like somebody was holding, like a light bulb, and you turn it on, from the observer, from the person who was sitting on top of the train, the light would spread across the train at the same speed, and so it would fill up the train in the same amount of time, in both the forward and backward direction. But from Einstein's perspective, sitting on the train station, seeing the train go by, because the train's moving, the light would hit the back corner first before the front corner. And that's how he conceived of time being relative and frame of reference being important. And then they worked out, like, I think, Lagrange equations and things like that eventually to explain it all. And so that's what I was thinking of, though, is this thought experiment that Einstein had. And so here's my poem, Einstein's Train. Einstein's Train. He's placed you inexplicably on the roof when the comfort of the dinner car would do. And it's empty now, but for the waiters waiting over the empty tables. You're tied to the center of the train's mass for safety's sake, all of it speeding now, at half the speed of light, the trees in the distance stretching to hedgerows, the sun a blunt dagger in the sky. The world you left red shifting, the future fading past violet. And there's Einstein at the station, leaning forward in his little bench, when the bulb in your lips flashes, the photons flowing out in every direction to the edges of the train's once dark roof, simultaneously but not in sync, and Einstein leaps through the wild silhouette of his hair in excitement. He seems to be shouting, but all of the sound, and whatever it means, remains lost in the air. So that is my poem, Einstein's Train. And here was Megan's poem, Every Time I See a Train. Every time I see a train, I imagine I'm on it, not inside but on top, jumping from one car to the next like stones across a river, and then lying down, my body a boat in that rushing metal current, the world so fast and me so still. That is Megan's Imagist type poem, Every Time I See a Train. And now let's see what you have, if we can get the open lines going. Let's see. So let's do Richard Westheimer, because he's a regular. We will see if everything working for him. Maybe we get an update. Hey, Richard, how you doing?
Good. I don't think I've ever seen you exasperated before, but
the whole time. I mean, the whole time I've been trying to figure out what was going on. I've been testing different connections and looking at the different streams, trying to keep a conversation going. It was been a very frustrating night. And I think if anybody watches back the video, there's some great poetry and great insights that Alison had. So what I'm going to do, it's recorded locally. And I think I'll just repost the whole video as its own video, and that should work fine. So we'll see. I don't know what the experience must have been like, but I thought it was just. I mean, the first thing you check is if it's one platform or the other, and it was every platforms. So yeah. So it must have been Caster, and I think what happened is they probably have like a computer in their server bank that's out or like broken, and we were going through that. And so reconnecting, I should have thought of it, but it took the whole show to figure out what it was. I think that's what it was. Anyway.
Well, I'm glad the connection between you and Alison worked out, because what I heard of the interview was... Yeah,
it's a good one. So the podcast will work fine on iTunes and all that stuff, and I'll post the videos on Facebook and YouTube just on their own, and that'll be fine.
Good.
So what do you want to share with us, Richard?
So I do have my Poets Respond poem, A Day Under the Broken Sky.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Which did respond, like some others, to some of the emergence of information about some of the families under the wreckage of the towers.
Yeah. Do you know how many people they found so far? It's like in the 20s, or is it even more than that now?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It is still current news. It still kind of leads, and I think there's, obviously there's a lot of things that could lead the news, but I think there's some sense that people have their, but for the grace of God go I, sort of sense, and this whole sense of doing the most ordinary thing you could possibly do, eating dinner or sleeping and being ripped out from underneath you.
Yeah. It's hard to even imagine.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's hear this. A Day Under the Broken Sky.
Yeah. So just real quick, I don't know if folks are familiar with the I Ching. Here's my little copy of it from college days, but I thought of those towers as sort of like an I Ching hexagram. Thus the epigraph. A day under the broken sky. And the epigraph is P holding together above the abysmal water, below the receptive earth, I Ching hexagram 8. 1. Beneath the rubble is a body. Beneath the body is rubble. Beneath the rubble is a body of one child missing her dolly, a body of one mother missing the hand of one child, missing her mother, as the building is slung to the ground, shattered like a giant vase, scattered for the rescue crew to try to join one child with one doll, with one mother, to rejoice if the litany of the crushed were two fewer. 2. We sleep on feather beds, covered in soft sheets, tucked in like dragons, hiding between I Ching trigrams, the abysmal, arousing thunder, heaven above, slashes of concrete below, and below, and below that the earth, and below that crumbling columns. 3. Rescuers dig through layers of time, sift from a mountain of dust the bones of Marcus, find the parts of Annalee, a doll's hand they place like a rose petal, but by the remains of Emma next to the body of her sister Lucia. I conjure kintsugi masters might arrive, mend the broken bodies with lacquer and golden thread. 4. A big guy in a yellow helmet, his gray caked face streaked with tears, sits on a pile of concrete and sobs, collects himself, stands, picks up his pickaxe, keeps picking at one small chunk at a time, ear cocked after each swing, divining for signs. 5. Atlas was given one task, to keep the sky from falling. 6. The sky is falling.
What an ending. Thanks for sharing that, Richard. Great poem.
Thanks, Tim. And I did send in a copy of the Billy Collins poem, Velocity, which I couldn't, since I had read that sometime previously, I couldn't actually write another poem because it's like the perfect on a train poem.
Yeah. Do you want to read that?
It's up to you.
Yeah, sure. Why don't you do that? And let me
I sent it in the
I see it. Yeah, I got it here. So Velocity. Yeah, this is the Billy Collins poem.
Yeah. Velocity. In the club car that morning, I had my notebook open on my lap and my pen uncapped, looking every inch the writer, right down to the little writer's frown on my face. But there was nothing to write about except life and death, and the low warning sound of the train whistle. I did not want to write about the scenery that was flashing past, cows spread over a pasture, hay rolled up meticulously, things you see once and will never see again. But I kept my pen moving by drawing over and over again the face of a motorcyclist in profile, for no reason I can think of. A biker with sunglasses and a weak chin, leaning forward, helmetless, his long, thin hair trailing behind him in the wind. I also drew many lines to indicate speed, to show the air becoming visible as it broke over the biker's face. The way it was breaking over the face of the locomotive that was pulling me towards Omaha and whatever lay beyond Omaha for me, all the other stops to make before the time would arrive to stop for good. We must always look at things from the point of view of eternity, the college theologians used to insist, from which I imagine we would all appear to have speed lines trailing behind us as we rush along the road of the world, as we rush down the long tunnel of time. The biker, of course, drunk on the wind, but also the man reading by a fire, speed lines coming off his shoulder in his book, and the woman standing on the beach, studying the curve of the horizon. Even the child asleep on a summer night, speed lines flying from the posters of her bed, from the white tips of the pillowcases, and from the edges of her perfectly motionless body.
Yeah, it's a great poem. That's Velocity by Billy Collins. He's Billy Collins for a reason.
Yeah, he is.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Richard. Yeah.
Thank you, Tim. You have a better week than you had.
Yeah, the last hour and a half has been rough, but it's peaceful now. Like everything works again. I think it looks like it. So,
good.
Oh well, have a good one, Richard.
Thanks. You too.
Okay,
bye.
So Richard Westheimer with two poems, a Billy Collins poem and then one of his own. Yeah, okay. So let's call up Grace Ferron. And I should say, I always have to let you know that I am calling from the future, and it may be like 20 minutes into the future now with all the buffering and the delays we were having on the stream. So make sure when I call you through the phone or through Skype, whichever it is, make sure that you hang up or mute wherever you're watching this right now, because otherwise there will be a delay. The delay gets confusing. And because of the delay, you can't read the poem from the screen either. So you have to have your own copy. You can't watch the video because you'll be 30 seconds or a minute or 20 minutes maybe off of where the stream is. So let me call up. I just got another email, so I'm pretty sure Grace Farron is here. Yeah, and let's call up Grace. I'm expecting the open minds might be a little rough because of how much buffering and delay, and people probably dropped out, but let's see. Hey, Grace.
Hi.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining me. Yeah.
Of course. I'm so excited that this platform exists.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So where are you calling from?
I'm in southern Vermont right now.
Excellent. And what did you want to share tonight?
So I wasn't sure that I had found the right prompt poem, so I just decided to share one of my own. This poem is about a guy that I met when I was traveling on my own, and he kind of seemed perfect at first on paper, but then as we spent time together, I realized just how totally wrong for me he was. And so, but we had this one beautiful, perfect day that I'll always cherish. And so this poem is kind of about that, but then like how you can have a perfect thing with something that then ends up being kind of like the wrong thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing this. Go ahead whenever you're ready. I'll have it on screen for everybody right now.
Okay, it's called J. Recite me your poetry in the dark, and I'll wait with dripping ears. Your big body is sometimes almost too much to bear, but we have the whole ocean to hold us. I am the waves, and you are the storm clouds, and together we are the sickly sweet sea foam green, the radioactive ocean, ready for the rain. I'll breathe in your heady curls again, thrust my body against the shore, bow and stern and rope and anchor. It is only us and the ghosts that walk these beaches anymore.
Hey, great poem and great images drawing through the entire piece. How long have you been writing? What? I'm having a bad day. So how long have you been writing? And what drew you to poetry? Just since you're a first time caller.
Yeah, thank you. I wrote poems kind of a lot as a child, but then I kind of like it left me for a long time, and I just kind of disconnected from that part of myself. I did have this like one night in college where I stayed up all night writing haikus about like my friends and reality television, and but it was very much a one-off. But about 2 years ago, a friend of mine got me on like an email chain of a 30-day like writing thing, like Alison was talking about, where you just do a poem every day. And that really reignited my love of writing poetry. And since then, I've just been writing a bunch, just all the time about everything, and trying to challenge myself to write like, I haven't been writing every day, but to write often, even if I don't feel like there's anything there, just to kind of like put pen to paper and try and get something out. But I love it, and I'm so grateful to have poetry back in my life again.
Well, I'm so glad you are, and I hope you can share more poems in the future.
Yeah, thank you. I would love to.
Yeah, thanks so much. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
Good night.
Good night.
Yes, that was Grace Farron. Her poem was Jay. And let's see, who should we call up next? Let's see. I'm going to try to get a little confirmation that people are here. But I know Carla Schwartz is here because she just called, so I'll call up because I'm assuming people dropped out. If you haven't dropped out because of the stream difficulties, you guys are troopers, and I love you. I love you either way, but it's really nice. Hey, Carla, how you doing tonight?
Okay, I just have to mute you.
Perfect.
Hi, thank you for calling me.
Yeah, I'm so glad we could have you.
Yeah, I was very flustered tonight, I have to tell you, with everything, trying to watch and listen.
Yeah, well, it's a good maybe, you can always get the podcast version and then just listen to it sometime maybe to catch what you missed, I guess.
Or on YouTube too, and actually I like sometimes watching on YouTube. I do it 1.5 speed, and it really, so because people like me, you can hear me talking right now, I'm kind of pausing. It's nice to do it at a little faster pace, and you still get the whole thing. So
yeah, that's so funny you said it, because I actively try to talk slower than I normally do. I listen to myself, and I realize I talk way too fast. I wasn't meant for being a radio host, that's for sure. So when I saw you on Facebook, because I went to Facebook tonight too, I also can read lips, and I could tell that you were out of sync with what you were saying, and I was like, oh wow, this is really kind of crazy. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Well, I think fortunately it's all recorded, so I'll just repost the full video. It'll be great. Yeah. I'm sure it'll be great. Yeah. So it'll just be like in a different spot or something, but you'll be able to find it on Facebook and YouTube again. So what did you want to share tonight, Carla? So I wrote this thing last week, and I had the train thing in mind, and but it's really like a song, and it's very raw. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. But I'm going to read it, and it's called "Love You to the End of the Earth." Okay, I've got it up. Go ahead whenever you're ready. I love you as the blue whale loves its krill. I love you like a fast train to Seville. I love you like a storm caught off guard that spins our boat around like we're in Oz. I feed you Thailand spoon by spoon, Mexico, Spain, and India too. Sometimes I melange one with another. You know how far I'd travel with you. Here, love, a spoon to your lips. Here, love, a storm we must endure. To the count of 3, we take a dip, cool our skin, staunch the fever. Oh, very good. I love that, Carla. Thanks so much for sharing that. And it's kind of what we were talking about, if you caught it, about music at the end, where you're sort of free, having a music type form to sort of go a little bit farther out than you would otherwise, Yeah. Thank you. And the other thing about this is when I first started to write it, I was actually thinking about the fact that I did once take a train to Seville, and it was the fast train, and it went so fast that I was basically knocked off my feet. I couldn't stand up. Oh, wow. Yeah, I've never experienced that, yeah. And so that kind of, even though that's not in there, it is behind what I wrote. So yeah, very interesting. Well, thanks. I'm so glad you could share that, Carla. All right, take care. Bye-bye. Yep, you too. Good night. Bye. Yeah, that was Carla Schwartz with Love You to the End of the Earth. And let's call Susan Talley. I'm going in sort of the opposite order because like as I was saying, as Carla answered, I think given the technical difficulties, some of the people who called in earlier might not still be here. So we'll start with the people who called more recently, because we know there probably are. And this is Susan Talley, who has another train poem. Hey, Susan, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. I'm glad I stuck with it and that you're here. Now everything's clear. I don't know if you want to put this poem up. It's like 3 pages long. It's written by the Turkish poet that was, he was like a dissonant. Uh-huh. I'm sure you've heard of him, but I sent it in as an open mic poem. Yeah, I think that'd be great. He's, this is a poem from 1962. Hikmet. Nizam Hikmet. But it says 1962, but he didn't live that long, so I'm a little confused. Well, this says at the top he died in 1963. Okay. So I think this is the last year of his life, I guess. Do you want to read it? No, I don't have it here. I thought you might want to post it. I didn't even know if you would read it.
Okay, yeah, I'll just hang up and read it. But why did you want to share this one first of all, and then I'll read it in a minute?
Because I learned about it in a poetry class many years ago, and it's written on a train, and it's just well, you'll see.
Well, what is it? I want to know, like, what is it about this poem that speaks to you, though?
Well, first of all, I couldn't think of anything because I thought of this poem. It stayed in my mind.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of a stream of consciousness. It wanders. It talks about his whole life, and it's just amazing, these realizations that he's coming out of a prison, basically.
Yeah. Okay, well, why don't you, I'll hang up, and then I'll just read it myself then.
Okay, it's very long. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks. Bye. That was Susan Talley with a recommendation. And this is Things I Didn't Know I Loved. Get it like this. Make sure we don't share Susan's email address. But this is Things I Didn't Know I Loved. In Nazim Hikmat, written in... oh, there it is. It says it right in the first line. It's March 20... It's March 1960... Wait, no. It's 1962, March 28th. I'm sitting by the window on the Prague-Berlin train. Night is falling. I never knew I liked night descending like a tired bird on a smoky, wet plain. I don't like comparing nightfall to a tired bird. I didn't know I loved the earth. Can someone who hasn't worked the earth love it? I've never worked the earth. It must be my only platonic love. And here I've loved rivers all this time, whether motionless, like this they curl skirting the hills, European hills crowned with chateaus, or whether stretched out flat as far as the eye can see. I know you can't wash in the same river even once. I know the river will bring new lights you'll never see. I know we live slightly longer than a horse, but not nearly as long as a crow. I know this has troubled people before, and will trouble those after me. I know that all this has been said 1,000 times before, and will be said after me. I didn't know I loved the sky, cloudy or clear, the blue vault Andre studied on his back at Borodino. In prison, I translated both volumes of War and Peace into Turkish. I hear voices, not from the blue vault, but from the yard. The guards are beating someone again. I didn't know I loved trees, bare beaches near Moscow and Peridelkino. They come upon me in winter, noble and modest. Beeches are Russian, the way poplars are Turkish. The poplars of Izmir losing their leaves, they call me the knife, lover like a young tree. I blow stately mansions, sky high. In the Ilgaz woods, in 1920, I tied an embroidered linen handkerchief to a pine bough for luck. I never knew I loved roads, even the asphalt kind. Vera's behind the wheel. We're driving from Moscow to the Crimea, Koktobile, formerly Gotepe Ile in Turkish. The two of us inside a closed box. The world flows past on both sides, distant and mute. I was never so close to anyone in my life. Bandits stopped me on the red road between Bolo and Jerideh when I was 18. Apart from my life, I didn't have anything in the wagon they could take. And at 18, our lives are what we value least. I've written this somewhere before. Wading through a dark, muddy street, I'm going to the shadow play, Ramazan night. A paper lantern leading the way. Maybe nothing like this ever happened. Maybe I read it somewhere. An 8-year-old boy going to the shadow play. Ramazan night in Istanbul, holding his grandfather's hand. His grandfather has on a fez and is wearing the fur coat with a sable collar over his robe. And there's a lantern in the servant's hand, and I can't contain myself for joy. Flowers come to mind for some reason, poppies, cactuses, jonquils. In the jonquil garden in Kadıköy, Istanbul, I kissed Marika, fresh almonds on her breath. I was 17, my heart on a swing touched the sky. I didn't know I loved flowers. Friends sent me 3 red carnations in prison. I just remembered the stars. I love them too. Whether I'm floored watching them from below, or whether I'm flying at their side, I have some questions for the cosmonauts. Were the stars much bigger? Did they look like huge jewels on a black velvet or apricots on orange? Did you feel proud to get closer to the stars? I saw color photos of the cosmos in Oganek magazine. Now don't be upset, comrades, but non-figurative, shall we say, or abstract, while some of them looked just like such paintings, which is to say they were terribly figurative and concrete. My heart was in my mouth looking at them. They are our endless desire to grasp things. Seeing them, I could even think of death and not feel at all sad. I never knew I loved the cosmos. Snow flashes in front of my eyes, both heavy, wet, steady snow and the dry, whirling kind. I didn't know I liked snow. I never knew I loved the sun. Even when setting, cherry red is now in Istanbul too. It sometimes sets in postcard colors. But you aren't about to paint it that way. I didn't know I loved the sea, except the sea of Azov, or how much I didn't know I loved clouds, whether I'm under or up above them, whether they look like giants or shaggy white beasts, moonlight, the falset, the falsest, the most languid, the most petite bourgeois strikes me. I like it. I didn't know I liked rain. Whether it falls like a fine net or splatters against the glass, my heart leaves me tangled up in a net or trapped inside a drop and takes off for uncharted countries. I didn't know I loved rain, but why did I suddenly discover all these passions sitting by the window on the Prague-Berlin train? Is it because I lit my sixth cigarette? One alone could kill me. Is it because I'm half dead from thinking about someone back in Moscow, her hair straw blonde, eyelashes blue? The train plunges on through the pitch-black night. I never knew I liked the night pitch black. Sparks fly from the engine. I didn't know I loved sparks. I didn't know I loved so many things, and I had to wait until 60 to find out, sitting by the window on the Prague-Berlin train, watching the world disappear, as if on a journey of no return. And that is from the Selected Poetry of Nazim Hikmet, translation copyright 1962 by Randy Blassing and Mathieu Connick. And that was a poem from Susan Talley's recommendation. And it's fun to read other poems too. So thanks so much for sharing this. I was not familiar with this poem, and I love it. That was Things I Didn't Know by Nazim Hikmet. Okay, and then let's go to another caller. And let's call up Dave Williams. Let's see. And then we'll go to Julian. I just saw Julian call in too, so we'll do that next. Okay, so Dave's not answering. Let's go over to hang on a second. Let's do Julian Matthews, because we missed him last time. Let's catch up with Julian this time.
Hi.
Hey, Julian, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you, Tim?
I'm good. So how are you're in, where are you?
Good tonight. Let me just switch off. I'm in Malaysia.
Yeah, that's right, Malaysia. And so how was the stream for you? Was it? I'm just trying to figure out if it was just certain servers that were messed up, or was it choppy for you too?
Yeah, it was choppy for me. I was switching between Facebook and YouTube, but
and it just didn't work anywhere. Yeah. Okay, so it must have been Caster then, because I sent it out to Caster, and then they send it to all the different servers. So okay, well, so what do you have to share for us tonight?
I have a couple of poems I sent you. So a prompt poem on the train, and called "Face It," and another one called "There Will Be No Statue," which is a response to Princess Diana's statue.
Okay, let me. Okay, so let's do "Face It" first. I just pulled that up, and that was the
prompt poem about the train.
Okay, yeah. So "Face It." Let's do "Face It" then, and I'll go ahead whenever you're ready.
Now, there are some Malay words in it, but I think people can I figure it out from the reading.
Perfect.
So, face it. So the kid in the LRT calls me uncle and offers his seat. I despair. It isn't the first time. I relent, nod, and give in. I sit on the seat with the little white icon, the pregnant woman, the woman with a baby, the old man with a cane, the OKU, disabled. Station berikutnya, Dang Wangi. The train pulls into another stop, not mine. Then it pulls out, and I spot the warped, skewered reflection of my face in the opposite window. When did my hair go so gray? The obvious giveaway for my uncleness. How did my face get so ruddy? The ravages of a pimply teenagehood. A reminder when appearances and blemishes mattered, and I was my own Dr. Pimple Popper. Now it's the surface of a moon, not ours, but a distant forgotten asteroid-scarred one. A dirty brown one like the moons of Neptune or the demoted Pluto, or maybe Uranus, or mine. And when did the shape of my face lose its roundness, that clean, polished, cherubic look, the kind that aunties would pull me closer as a child just to pinch my cheeks? Now it's longer, sullen, and cheerless, the side of a granite hill, a calcified limestone face that has been quarried and blasted, or the kind paleontologists chip away at to look for fossils. And right smack in the middle is the large bulbous monstrosity, something Neanderthal, something from a horror movie. A clown's nose I could just paint red and show up as the entertainment at a children's party. Sniff, sniff. And those lips, dry and wilted, not smiley, hopeful as before, lips that parted way too much for always speaking my mind. And those cynical faraway eyes, no longer bright, optimistic like the child I once was. I heard a writer once say, I'm every age I've ever been. Ditto, I'm every age I ever was. Maybe not on the outside, but on the inside. Then the train announces the next stop, Taman Bahagia, and I get off.
Excellent poem. I love that. I can definitely relate. Thanks. That was Face It. And yeah, but really well done. Thanks for sharing that, Julian. And what was the other one? The other one was a Poet Respond poem, right?
Yeah, there's one on Mars. If rock on Mars cracks open and no one sees it.
Yeah. So what inspired this one?
So there is a rock on Mars which the rover Perseverance spotted, and it cracked. And sadly enough, the person who posted it on Twitter from NASA suggested it's a butt crack rock.
Oh gosh.
And all the news carried it, and I felt real sympathy for the rock.
Yeah, I would too. Okay, thanks for. Let's hear this. This is if a rock on Mars cracks open and no one sees it. Go ahead with that one.
If a rock on Mars cracks open and no one sees it. If a poem is written but never seen, does the universe still read it? If a song is composed but never played, does the universe still hear it? If art is created but never exhibited, does the universe still appreciate it? If a dream is dreamed but no one remembers it, does the universe still awaken to it? If a rock on Mars cracks open and no one sees it, does the universe still care? Oh, rock on Mars, we earthlings, scientists no less, discover you after millennia, yet still choose to insult you. Isn't it just like the human colonist mentality to make fun of the natives, to infantilize your brokenness, to invalidate your existence, to excavate your insides and rip your Martian heart out? If a rock on Mars cracks open and no one sees it, does the universe still care for you? Yes, it does. I do. You are no one's primal fault. The universe peers into your soul and sees the shiny center. It cradles your alluvial despair in its sturdy hand. It perceives your rough edges as only poetry. It lowers its ear to your fissure and hears you sing. And when it is quiet late at night and you cry alone, it lulls you to sleep and paints you a Venusian dream.
Oh, thanks so much for sharing that one too. That was surprisingly touching. I thought it was gonna, go in a different direction. I felt that very moving. Thanks so much for sharing that, Julian.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, always a pleasure. I'll talk to you soon. Bye. So Julian Matthews with 2 poems. If a rock on Mars cracks open and no one sees it. And you can find Julian at hashtag Julian's Poems. That's JuliansPoems. And, okay, let's go to Dave Williams says he's here. Let's call up Dave Williams and see. We're coming up in the time that we should be ending, but with so many mess ups, I'm just happy everything's working right now. So let's just roll for a little extra bonus time. But Dave's still not here. Dave Cook's still here, though. David Cook. Let's call up David Cook. Hey, David, I hear myself in the background, so I'm going to mute you for a second, but that is very reassuring to know that you're lined up pretty closely.
I'm still here. Let me get the video going.
Okay.
I didn't get a chance to take a shower, so I'm a little filthy.
Well, that's all right. So what did you want to share tonight? Are you coming with the video or no?
I'm trying to.
I think there you go.
Go.
Yeah, it's been a while, David. What have you been up to lately?
I have a landscape maintenance business, and so I just, after I think it was March of the pandemic, and my business didn't slow down at all. So I was just out weeding and mowing and getting everybody's yard all set up because everybody was out in their yards because we didn't get any rain in Oregon.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's kind of what it was like at Rattle. I mean, there was no slowdown. There was a speed up. Everybody was sending in poems. There was no break. No, but it's great to see you again, though, because it's been a year, I think, since you've been on. And it's sad to say at this time of year, though, but with the pandemic, you think, God, I hope David Cook's okay. It's been a while. You just never know. So I'm so glad to see you. What did you want to share tonight?
This Saturday is the 36th anniversary of the sinking of the Rainbow Warrior, which was a Greenpeace ship that was sunk by French government forces. They had basically their secret, like the CIA, I guess. Put a couple of bombs on the vessel and sank it when it was docked in Auckland, New Zealand, and it just kind of I learned about that and I just thought it was done by a Western nation, and they just did it because they wanted to be able to stop the protests of the nuclear weapons being tested in the South Pacific, and they killed a journalist and
wow.
And
then I haven't heard about that in, I don't know, 15, 20 years. It's not something that the news, that you hear about, but what an event.
And I don't think things have changed that much as far as, governments trying to get away with, subterfuge like that.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back, forever. That's just how, the United Fruit and remember the Maine, I remember the Maine, things like that. So let's hear this. This is Fixed. I'll put it up.
Fixed, in memoriam of photographer and father Fernando Pereira, killed in the sinking of the Greenpeace ship, the Rainbow Warrior, July 10th, 1985. Someday all this will have to be developed, carefully printed, fixed. Christopher Isherwood, Goodbye to Berlin, 1939. He is a camera with his shutter, his lenses and filters, battery of flashes, memory makers, soul keepers, names sounding as solid as horse bones, Pentax, Minolta, Canon. It is no wonder Pereira went back to the darkening hold of the Rainbow Warrior, tools laid out to rescue his living. Did he step into the flooding bilge like photographic paper, slaking silver bromide dreams, bound and drowned with his camera straps? Did the second flash of the limpid mind reveal a minuscule moon as a lens for the heavens? Did he see his children's covered eyes, their peekaboo, as camera obscura? Did he focus on seeing life as a series of stills, each day an aperture? Shame, even for the name, Operation Satanic, for Mitterrand's attempt to etiolate the exposure, dodge his solemn moves, for draping his head like a photographer, hooded under a napkin, sepia teeth gnashing on the grit of ortolan bones.
Oh, excellent poem, and a great thing to be reminded of. What is this at the very bottom? Poetry boxes. Take a poem, leave a poem, take a moment.
Oh, that's the, I have a website and I make poetry boxes for that. They're kind of like the free libraries.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, but they hold poems. And
cool.
Actually, Rattle Magazine is really a good source for the poems because they're usually about the right length to fit on an 8.5 by 11, and they're usually appropriate for the whole neighborhood to read.
Wow, that's very cool. That's a great idea.
Yeah, that's poetryboxes.com.
Yeah, poetryboxes.com. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. It's a cool idea. Thanks, David.
Okay, I'll talk to you later. Thank you for sticking in there and.
Yeah. Well, thanks for people who are sticking with it in the audience. I really thought that we'd have no open lines. That's what I was thinking. Is at the end, I thought, well, no one's going to be here. So I'm glad you were. Thanks, David, and everybody else too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Good night.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. Great to see you again, David.
Good thing going here.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. That was David Cook with Fixed, about the sinking of the Greenpeace ship Rainbow Warrior. That was July 10th, 1985. So this is the, what would that make it? 36? Oh my gosh, 36 years. Okay, let's call up Angela. I'm just going sort of in reverse order this time. Yeah, we have a lot of open lines too, actually. So we'll see how many people we can get to. Here's Angela Gardner.
Hi, Tim.
Hey, Angela. Great to see you still hanging out here, too.
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
I think I hear myself in the background, so mute. Okay, that's better. That's better.
Okay.
Yeah, so, thanks for hanging out, too. I appreciate it. I guess people were vigilant.
We're always here at Rattle. Your Rattle community is dedicated. So.
Well, thanks. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I really thought we were just talking to nobody toward the end of that interview. So it's really great to see everybody still here. So what did you want to share tonight?
Well, I just wanted to share my Poets Respond poem. Mm-hmm. It's about the exorcism for dead trees at Home Depot.
So tell us a little bit about that. I remember it was one of those where I read the article, but tell me about it.
Well, basically, I guess these people went into Home Depot in around PA, and they went in there and had a seance for the lumber. So it was like an exorcism for the dead trees. It just became big news. And actually, it's funny because it came into my local news network in Ohio. Because, it just came big news because the police blotter. It just had a little line on the police blotter, and then it kind of blew up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's really just, I think it's probably some YouTubers who are doing something silly, but I
think everything is these days.
I think it's really that, but basically, yeah, they told the police that they were doing an exorcism for the trees in the lumber aisle, and then they got kicked out. They no charges or anything, but it was just I love the police blotters. Like, they always have some interesting stuff. So
is that from being a journalist looking at the police blotter?
Oh yeah, I just I'm a news junkie. I just look at everything. So
okay, well, go ahead and whenever you're ready. Exorcism for the dead trees.
Exorcism for the dead trees. In the lumber aisle of Home Depot, they chanted, "For the once young seedlings whose roots grew old, The tree was home to the squirrels who stored their summer bounty. The birds birthed their babies on top of the branches. A jagged blade cut its life short, stripping it of the faithful leaves. The soul in its wood sought to stay beneath the rings. A seance in the store called it to leave and return to the forest gleam.
Excellent poem. Thanks so much for sharing that, Angela. That's a cool story and cool take on it. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Yep, you too.
Thanks.
Bye. There was Angela Gartner with Exorcism for the Dead Trees. Let's see, who else can we call up? Try Spartacus. I hope... Let's see if he's still awake. It is late out there now.
Hiya.
Good evening, Spartacus. How are you doing tonight?
I'm really well, and you, Tim?
I'm excellent too. Let me fix your video. 1 second. There we go. So how are things?
Good, but the internet doesn't help a lot. Yeah, so it's a pity that I couldn't listen to the whole interview.
Yeah, hopefully, I'm curious to see how it is on replay, because I don't know if it was just broken up or if it was actually, it might be fine even if after they process it and weave it all back together, maybe it'll be okay. I don't know. But anyway, what do you want to share with us tonight?
So I've got Poet's Response poem about Rembrandt, about a dream poem, painting that they try to restore, and I've got a combined poem, Poet's Response and prompt poem about a monkey that he went into a rail station.
Well, I have the monkey one. Do you want to do that one?
Yep.
Okay, why don't we... you have two here. I see. Okay.
Yes.
And I pulled up this... Let's do the monkey one first. So I pulled up this story. Monkey found at Campbell Sang railway station, reunited with family. This is the monkey here, and he was found at a railway station. Oh, poor little guy eating out of a tin can.
Yeah, it even had food at the train station. So, yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean, maybe it's not such a bad place to live. Okay, so let's hear this poem. This is Monkey Found at Railway Station.
Reunited with its owner. Asking myself questions in a moving train after a torrential rain. What would I rather lose? My train, my temper, a monkey, or my muse? My human owner never asked me the question with his pompous voice in this never-ending game of only one choice. But modern times make me think that change is coming if I spend wisely his ink for preparing a poetic reply as the missing link for my alibi. It was not difficult to spot food in the station. Every train looked very old when I was hungry and cold. I was not ready to go to the zoo. I just didn't have any clue how to find my place in the city next to a jungle's graffiti.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. Then do you want to do the other one too? Postcard from Bristol?
Postcard from a library in Bristol. Dear Rembrandt Harmenson Van Rijn, today I went to a library in Bristol to learn more about your painting, The Night Watch. Where can I find books about Rembrandt? I asked the surprised librarian 5 times. She was a middle-aged woman with bright eyes and a charming chin. The 5th time, she told me that she was deaf. Your face mask does not let me read your lips, she told me. So I matched my words with your image. I showed her the postcard purchased at a stationery store, and her smile made the day shinier before making her way to the section of Dutch painters. I felt a Dutch explorer on display in Rijksmuseum, a boat sailing in the canals of the city of Amsterdam, caring about your story in an animated portrait. I studied the geometric relationships of male symbols of strength, the captain, the lieutenant, the musketeers, the drummer, the boy. I saw the golden girl with the dead chicken. I realized that you wanted your action picture to last more than a moment. The moving shadow of an outstretched artistic hand, the reflection of the artist looking his creation. I saw your self-portrait with its dark tone, next to the gate for entering into another dimension, an open mouth that speaks prophetic words of poetry, woven with glowing embers. Yesterday, in an art class, I have been learning about paper cutting, how to create patterns and space out of empty space, trimming paper for a doily. In the classroom, there are many titles in a collection of paintings. The violin bee without a flower, a silent violin waiting for a violinist. Outside the classroom in which I grew up, there is a zoo full of overgrown carnivorous flowers and plants waiting to listen to the words of a biblical Jonah. In your aging painting, Rembrandt, I now stare at every corner stretching the space of a universe in creation. The postcard view of the soul of an artist that knows how to hide his youth of his art in plain sight.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that. I love the ending there. That was
Thanks, Tim.
Postcard from a library in Bristol. Thanks for sharing that. Always happy to see you, Spartacus.
Thanks, Tim. Bye-bye.
Bye. There's a Spartacus Anagnosterus with two poems, a prompt poem and a poet respond poem. Let me see. Who else can we get to? I don't think I haven't read a poem by Carlton Johnson in a while. And here is Carlton Johnson's prompt poem response. And this is Off the Tracks for High Z, March 1964 to March 26th, 1989, age 25. Hi, and I'll just read this for you. This is from Wikipedia. This is the epigram. High Z was fascinated with Tibetan culture and Qigong in his last years. He ended his life by lying on the path of a train not far from Shinhaiguan, near his 25th birthday. A bag with a Bible, a book of selected stories by Joseph Conrad, Walden by Henry David Thoreau, and Kon-Tiki by Thor Heyerdahl was found beside his body. And that is a quote from Wikipedia about this person. This is Off the Tracks by Carlton Johnson. Off the Tracks. Thor, Henry, and Joseph gathered round High's upturned soul. The train black with sooty indifference, tracks backed up to yesterday, like steam off a warm weather pond. Lifeless he lay. Thor, Henry, and Joseph were his only companions along the tracks, now running out of time, out of luck, near Shinhaiguan. The tracks now bare, the hollow marks clickety-clack, as High rested upon the tracks. His sack, containing his closest friends, Henry David Thoreau, Thor Heyerdahl, Joseph Conrad, all in a bag about the tracks. The sun rose over the Shinhaiguan, just short of his 25th birthday, when the last verse escaped and found the tracks, leading to a silent trace of words. And that was Carlton Johnson's prompt poem, Off the Tracks. Let me do the other one. He had two, and that one was pretty short. Let's do the other one as well. He also has a poet's respond poem here. And this is a short one, too. This is, here we go for this. It's called Flat. And let's see. And it comes with a definition. Flat, noun, 1801, a story of a house. From Scottish flat, floor, or story of a house. From Old English, flat, a dwelling, hall, floor, ground. And that's from the online dictionary. Here's Carlton Johnson's poem, Flat. When the let me hang on one second. Let me try to see. Is there context for this? I don't see it. Never mind. Okay, here's flat. When the 9-story apartment structure collapsed into a mass of concrete morass, assorted pipes, PVC and lead, cabinets, beds, ovens and oven mitts, toilets and shit, rubble and grit. Now there remains the pictures on the refrigerator doors, the Hummel figurines, the brown Barcalounger leather lounge chair, the Panasonic color TV, the Maytag washer, the Oriental rugs, the assorted kitchen and writing utensils all heaped together as if life were an earthquake that came through and upending life as we knew it. And so it goes. And that is Carlton Johnson's poem, of course, about the condo collapse, like our Poet Respond poem was. That seems like a long time ago that we shared that poem, or Poet Respond poem. Let's see. I wonder if Nivedita's been waiting this whole time, too. Let's call up Nivedita. And Gordon Coppola. I don't know if Gordon's here, too. We'll do Nivi and Gordon, and if they're here still. And that'll probably wrap up the show. But Nivi might be gone to work already. I don't think Nivedita's here. She probably bailed out on it. Let's see. We'll try Gordon Coppola, see if Gordon's still here. Hey, Gordon. I'm glad you're stuck with us too, huh?
I did.
Well, thank you for that. So, how are you doing this evening?
Doing great. You know, we had some unseasonably very hot temperatures. About a week ago, we got up to like 108 here, which I think was the highest temperature that has ever been recorded in the Seattle area. But it's very pleasant now. So
That's good. It's good to know it's cooled off. Yeah, it was like the longest or the biggest one-day drop in temperature. I saw a bunch of records for that too. So feeling better now, I guess.
Yeah.
So what did you want to share tonight?
Well, I got a prompt poem for a train. And it's funny, you mentioned you'd hardly ever been on a train. Because of my job in the military in Korea, Germany, and D.C., where I was stationed, I rode in trains just hundreds and hundreds of times, loved trains. I could not think of anything to write about a train for a poem until a couple of days ago, so I finally came up with something. So this one's called Stay on Board, Trust Your Engineer. Remember Back to the Future Part 3 at the end when that steam locomotive rises from its narrow traditional tracks to soar through time and space in bright renewable pastels? Well, that's our destination on this train, my friend, which is why we advocate for ever greater speed as we progress toward what seems to be a cliff to a few fragile passengers lost in ancient fears of change, their small souls corrupted by shills for steel rail corporations and those who split and creosote the wooden ties. Accelerating, approaching our long-desired horizon, we enter the final tunnel's mouth. Look left. Marks on the wall flash by. Countdown to something wonderful.
Great short poem. Stay on board, trust your engineer. Thanks for sharing that, Gordon.
Thank you, Tim. You have a good night, man.
Yeah, you too. Bye. There's Gordon Coppola. Okay, let me see if is there someone else we can squeeze in here. Joey Stahl is still here. So let's or we'll see if Joey Stahl is still here. Hey, Joy, how you doing tonight?
All right. I was trying to get you muted there.
No problem. So I'm glad you stuck with us, too. So what did you want to share? I think it's a prompt poem, right?
Yes, it's a prompt poem, and this is a true story.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to say, or is that it?
No, that's it.
Okay, let's hear it.
First train ride. As the train chugs down the tracks, my gaze is not on the scenery, but instead on your face. This is your first train ride. The sparkle in your eyes is matched only by the train facts you are excitedly expounding. Other passengers show astonishment and admiration of the depth of knowledge your 4-year-old self is sharing with your captive audience. I snap a photo as you repeat what kind of engine is pulling the train, numbering its wheels like a pro. You are wearing your engineer's cap, waving the wooden souvenir whistle with the railroad's logo on it. This obsession is why we are riding this train, and why I tell everyone that you have a one-track mind.
That was precious. Thanks so much for sharing that first train ride.
Thanks.
Yeah, have a good night, Joy.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
It was Joy Stahl with First Train Ride. Okay, I think that's going to have to... So Nivi's work started, but maybe I could read one of Nivi's poems really quick before we go. Dave Williams is still here too. Let's call up Dave, and then I do have to go. I can put my son to bed. Oops. So Dave's not answering. Do we have a phone number? Let's see. See if Dave left a phone number somewhere. He says he's here in the chat, but you're not picking up, Dave. Try it one more time. Nope, it says Dave's unavailable. I'm sorry, Dave. Let me see what you had for us. This is so the New Yorker. Let's see. My poem, I'll just read it for him. My poem for the prompt is a 3-car train, an engine, a single passenger car, and a caboose. The caboose may be hard to follow if you haven't read the Haruki Murakami novel it's based on. All you really need to know here is that one of his main characters takes a book to read while he's traveling by train. My end poem is from his point of view. The book he's reading is a collection of travel essays. The one he becomes absorbed by is also from the point of view of someone on a train to a mysterious destination, a town of cats. Interesting. And so here is, let me show this. This is, drop that down. This is what Dave sent. And this is from the New Yorker, The Town of Cats by Haruki Murakami. And it's from September 5th, 2011. So we have that here. And also at the very top of all this, in my subtitle, is an allusion to a song by the Velvet Underground. And that's Coming Around the Bend. So here comes, this is 3 sonnets in a row. And we'll close out the show with this because I do have to get going. Sonnets in a trilogy train, coming around the bend. Let me actually, I think it's a little too small. Let me put that in a Word document too. Here we go. Okay, so here comes the sonnets and a train. In a trilogy train, coming around the bend. Still a little small. There we go. Sonnet aboard. It's hard to take a train trip in a sonnet. Line 14 can often fall far short. Often by the time I'm sat down on it, it's time to disembark, so I abort. Or after many sudden starts and stops, stressed by rhymes that highlight them with jolts, and passing endless plains, reshuffling crops, we steam by on a hum of fuel and bolts. At least a sonnet only has few stages, and doesn't draw out to 1,000 cars. I can turn the dark night black like pages laying out atop its boxcars beneath stars. This mode of travel is so often taken, it's also something easy to have faith in. The next one, all trestled out. I wonder if a train of thought might lurk in exercises of imagination, where it takes work to feel an engine jerk or be caboosed by tugs of ruination. There's places where my mind may run off track, around the bend where deer pounce into bushes, and I can even crane my neck right back, in pillows where the engine whistle pushes. Then I slow forward, leaning into station, in anticipation of departure. on the platform of my destination where I slipped down, not feeling any ardor. Thousands of miles passed by without a trace, but now I'm home. There's nothing to embrace. Tango reads A Town of Cats while on the train in 1984 with a Q in it. I don't know how you're supposed to say that, the Murakami book. Riding on a train's a lot like reading. As I'm finding from this little book I brought along to take a look at being unseated by a self-reflecting look. In this book also one rides on a train, but unlike me, not headed towards his dying father's room, hid back on some mountain. We're both off to remote resorts of spying. In my case, mainly on my hidden past. In his, the mystical end town of cats. We'll spy on him, but we'll arrive, at last. The both of us, with this and that's, pulled behind by steely locomotive. That's less an engine than it is a motive. Very cool sonnets. Thanks for sharing that. That was Dave Williams. Sorry we couldn't connect. I think for some reason the ringer wasn't turned on or something like that. But that's going to have to finish up the show. Thanks, everybody, for listening and for your patience again through the difficulties, technical and otherwise, this evening. But I appreciate getting to talk to you all. And I'm going to put up the screen for the next... Actually, before I do that, I should say this week's guest, once again, was Alison Luterman, just in case you missed all this. Alison Luterman had these two wonderful books of poetry, In the Time of Great Fires and Dear Desire Zoo. And you can find more of Alison Luterman's work at her website, which is alisonluterman.net. Just like it's spelled there on the screen, ALISONLUTERMAN.net. That is Alison's website. So you can find these books and links to the best places to buy them there and places like that. And now, for the prompt for next week, we have this. Oops. Get rid of the guest poet. Write a poem based on or containing an idiom. If you need help finding an idiom, try the idiom generator at randomword.com/idiom. So we're going to write some idiomatic poetry next week. If you don't know what an idiom is, you can look it up because I don't know the strict definition of it. But we will look forward to writing those poems next week. How do you define an idiom? It's like a let me read it. So a group of words established by usage as having a meaning not deducible from those of the individual words. So yes, that's why it's hard to define. So it's an expression. I mean, so raining cats and dogs or see the light. So those kind of expressions that where chunks of words mean things together that they don't necessarily mean. The nuances of languages is basically what an idiom is. So we're going to write a poem based on or about or including idioms for next week's prompt. And hopefully the technical stuff will be better by then. And next week's guest is only 5 days away. Next week's guest is going to be Brother Yao. We are in episode number 101 now. Now, Brother Yao was a guest way back in episode number 5 or something, or maybe 10. It's been 2 years since he's been on, and he has this new book. I just love Brother Yao's work, so I really wanted him on. It's the first time we're having a repeat guest, but we're going to be doing that from time to time as people publish new books. His new book is One Shoe Marching Towards Heaven, and a beautiful cover and a great book. I just love his work. So we're going to be talking to Brother Yao in Rattlecast number 101. Hope you have a good rest of your night. We'll see you for the critique of the week, and then for Rattlecast number 101. And that is Sunday, July 11th, the regular day, but I am moving it forward 1 hour. So if you go to the website, rattle.com/rattlecast, there's a list of the schedule. If anything's unusual, I bolded it. And I'm moving this up because I have a commitment going on until 5, so I have to move it up a little bit, my time. So it'll be Sunday, July 11th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Rattlecast number 101 with Brother Yao and his new book, One Shoe Marching Towards Heaven, and all your poems about idioms. So looking forward to that and hope you have a great rest of your week. Good night.